Okay, yes, we are live. So it may take a little while for people to come, I don't know how many will get watching the actual live. Um, it won't be huge amounts, but they might watch it back afterwards. So yeah, we can, I suppose, start CougarW. I'll ask the question: who is CougarW?
Yeah. So let's see. Who am I? I'm 66 years old. I live in California, born and raised in California. Um, I have a, I'm retired now, but I have a long and storied career. My original uh, ambitions were to be a biologist. I was raised in Northern California, which is very rural, forested, streams, everything you can imagine. And my father was an outdoorsman. So as I grew up embedded in nature with livestock and a bunch of other things going on. So I always had an interest in studying life, turning over rocks, literally, out in the boonies, turning over rocks and looking for snakes and lizards. And so, not too surprisingly, and then because my father was a contractor in Vietnam when the war was still on, our family got to live in Bangkok, and I learned even more about nature because Thailand is one of the richest, most diverse landscapes on the planet. So when I came back, I decided, I think I'm just going to study biology when I go to college, and that's what I did. I got a master's degree in biology. I did field work for the U.S. government, actually, EPA, Superfund cleanup sites, doing biological work, field work, and then discovered that my skills with computers, which were unusual for biologists to have those kind of skills, my skills with mathematics and data display and computers in general would actually pay better if I was not doing biology, or I was kind of a one-off, a strange person for having those skills. But if I went into startups, I would be much more understood. And that's exactly what I did. I married my wife and immediately started a career in computer engineering science and basically making websites. And so this was early on in the internet. I did a lot of innovative things, opened up a lot of doors for myself and other people, and retired from that work about 5 years ago, I guess. And now I work on my property here in the South Bay of the Bay Area. So
Hmm.
that's San Jose, Santa Clara area.
Hmm.
We have a home here. Our children are adults. I live with my wife, and we work on our property. As for my climate science, I got turned on to climate science actually during my master's degree. James Hansen had just given his pivotal speech to the U.S. Congress. Al Gore later came back with his pivotal work with things like An Inconvenient Truth. But I was hooked during my master's degree. And I was interested in it from the perspective of a biologist because there's a lot of overlap between biology and fossil fuels. Um, I
Right.
think most people understand that, but also there's an entire carbon cycle that really is the domain of biology. We study the carbon cycle in the
Can can
biosphere.
can you explain to the unenlightened what the carbon cycle is, please?
Certainly, certainly. So the Earth dynamic system is a system of systems. There's the hydrologic system, which is, we learned this in third grade, right? Evaporation, transportation, and precipitation. And one of the biggest systems that we care about as living things is the carbon cycle. And the carbon cycle is how carbon atoms move between the various components of the Earth dynamic system into and out of living things. And most people know that adults will have learned that plants absorb carbon dioxide from the atmosphere to build plant material, tissues, roots, stems, leaves, the whole thing. And then animals that can't do photosynthesis like plants can eat the plant material to gain the carbon for their own uses that way. We don't pull carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere. And then animals release carbon dioxide into the atmosphere due to their own respiration, right? We exhale carbon dioxide.
Mm-hmm.
And also, when all living tissues decay or die and decompose, they release carbon back out into the atmosphere. So even trees do that. So it's a cycle of carbon. The carbon makes its way into the atmosphere, also from volcanoes, but it's a very small component of what we're talking about here. But
Right.
it's there. It's always there. And then the plants pull it out, and then the animals and non-plant organisms use it, and it cycles within the cycle. It cycles in and out of the living component, the biosphere. And then, what less people don't know is, and this is kind of critical to the larger topic of global heating, climate change, a certain amount of the carbon in the past that was present in plant material did not return to the atmosphere. It was buried. And this was probably, I've never heard this discussed, but this was probably a one-off. Conditions in the earth were such that it was easy to bury huge amounts of tree material. Well, tree-like, some of it was not technically trees, and they weren't any flowering plants, but tree-like things were buried in the ground. And these later became our coal deposits. And there was a whole nother part of the plant kingdom out in the water, oceans and freshwater systems, that were basically the equivalent of algae and diatoms that were also buried, but in this case, in the ooze and the muds of these large bodies of water. The Earth has really always been 3/4 or more covered with water. So what happens on the oceans is a big deal. So there was enormous amounts of carbon dioxide equivalent, carbon atoms, that were being sequestered into the soil and into the sediments of the bodies of water. The latter became crude oil and natural gas, which are almost always found together. And the land version of that, which was ferns and club mosses and other things, became coal seams. And so the carbon cycle for a while, not so much anymore, but for a time, had a sequestration version of that. And massive amounts of carbon did not cycle back and was buried. And that doesn't happen too much anymore. The Earth system has changed, in particular, the biosphere has changed, so that the sequestration component of the carbon cycle is basically unhinged. It really doesn't happen.
Yeah, because you said it was a once-off, but I would imagine
maybe that's kind of my interpretation of the.
I mean, you can imagine, for example, volcanoes erupting, causing lava flow to trap, organic material underneath, drying or cooling lava, and stuff like that happening. But there must have been a hell of a lot that got, that's the thing. It was a hell of a lot of organic material, wasn't it?
It's almost incomprehensible. And it wasn't volcanoes, and it probably wasn't even like erosion of dirt. So if a tree falls in a river and it gets swept out to sea, then there's a certain amount of silt that gets swept out to sea too.
Right,
so
exactly. Yeah.
Okay. I don't think it's like that's what we see today.
Yeah, because that would be very small, and that would be layer upon layer upon layer, wouldn't it? Each layer would be very minute. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so
and it would take a lot.
Exactly. How did
forever.
It come to be then that there were these, or do you know that there was? Can you speculate on that? There were these huge layers.
I don't think we really know because we weren't there, and this doesn't. And the signature of what happened, I'll get to that in a second. The signature of what must have happened is actually in the coal seams. That's our only evidence. But what must have happened is that the Earth was much hotter. And people will say, oh, the Earth's been hotter in the past. That's true. And that is kind of a denialist trope. But the Earth was hotter in the past. There were no ice ages. And the seas were much deeper. And the seas were warmer, which we are just barely experiencing today in real time. the seas are getting warmer. And what we're finding is that these storms that we're getting are more and more violent. But we've just started that story. But in the past, the Earth was much warmer. The seas were much warmer. And I think the storms must have simply been cataclysmic. Cataclysmic. There are theoretical storms called hypercanes. You can look that up in like Wikipedia. Hypercane.
Yeah.
They're theoretical, but they have like 500-mile-an-hour winds, 1,000-kilometer-per-hour winds, and they can last for months or even years. Like the red spot on Jupiter. The red spot on Jupiter is a cyclone that just never stopped. It's a kind of a hypercane. So they're thinking we could have had those in the past. The oceans were much hotter, and the plants that were growing on the land were not like woody trees. They were more like gigantic ferns, which can grow very quickly. So I think what was happening, and again, the only evidence for this is the coal seams themselves and the oil deposits themselves. What was likely happening is the Earth was massively hot, hugely productive, lots of erosion, lots of minerals in the water, lots of growth, lots of everything, and these fast-growing plants, and they would grow, and then a huge storm would fly by, hit everything, knock it down, throw it out in the water, wash it all out to sea.
It was like there was a hyperclone coming along causing compost heaps to develop, and then those ferns would grow really, really quickly again, and another one would come and mow them down and cause this heap of rotting debris to develop and continue growing. Yeah,
that's my interpretation of the data found in coal seams. So you see no activity like that today.
So how does I can understand that? Why does it go under then? Like why does rock appear on top of it then? Is that because of volcanoes and plate tectonics?
No, it's simply
glacial shifts or whatever.
It wasn't. Well, first of all, coal seams can be 50, 60 feet deep without any intervening layers.
True.
Of sediment, and that's 50 million years of deposition, probably. As for what was actually happening, we don't know. We weren't there. There is going to be a lot of, if it really is storms, then it's likely that the land itself didn't have a lot of sediment to wash out like we do today. It was just, rocky landscapes that were being constantly washed into the sea, and then the plants would come with it. So there would be enormous amounts of this plant material swept out to sea or into lakes or inland bodies, allowed to deep deposit. Always underwater, no chance for decomposition. I've even heard theories that there really weren't any decomposers back then, not like we have now. We have decomposers like termites, insects, that didn't even exist. There's a whole regime now of decomposers that simply hadn't evolved yet. So the conditions back then were very different. The conditions in the Earth system itself were different. It was hotter. There was more CO2 in the atmosphere, and everything that was going on. The biosphere was completely different. And it's really hard for us to understand what that would have been like. And the only evidence we have of what it must have been like is these coal seams that are 50, 60 feet deep, for which there is currently absolutely no analog. There's nothing like that happening now in nature. Nothing close to it at all.
It's bizarre, isn't it?
Well,
I mean, you do have, like bog areas in like Europe and Russia, and I don't know, maybe in North. I don't know. Do you have bogs in North America? You must do. Wetlands, they probably call them wetlands.
Yeah. Again, in the colder areas.
Yeah.
So the cold is really hard.
Those are kind of areas where this build-up, you can plausibly see it happening. But it's obviously a slow process. It's like the plant life lives, the plant life dies. It sinks to the bottom of the water and just rots, and then you can imagine that building up layer by layer. But that's on the surface. What you're talking about was subterranean. So it's just the time scales.
It's also on the surface though, because it's in the water. It's just not on the land. The water has characteristics that, and also our current bogs, like our what we call them peat bogs, right? Generally, that's the word for it.
Yeah,
those can be used for fuel. So it does happen. They do settle, and the plant tissue contains energy and carbon that can be burned. But these deposition regimes that must have happened in the past, and they happened like 300 million years ago. The planet is completely different now. These deposition regimes to create coal seams that are 60 feet thick with after compression. Okay, after compression, these
Mm.
regimes must have been completely unhinged. Just
Right,
nothing that
right.
we could even imagine. Your idea of a peat bog, that's 20 feet deep, and you can dig the peat out and burn it. In geologic time, that peat bog would have compressed to 5 millimeters
Hmm.
or
Hmm.
20, 30 millimeters. Okay, a whole
Okay.
deep peat bog would have vanished into almost nothing. So 50 feet, 60 feet of coal seam is just humans cannot comprehend what that was like. We just have the fossil evidence, and that's
Hmm.
all we've got.
Hmm.
We also know the Earth was hotter.
Okay, dude. Well, it seems what you've said so far was the Earth was a very different place in terms of climate. We were much much hotter. There was unbelievably extreme weather conditions with these hyperclones. Uh, and,
Probably.
and probably. And then we had this system that basically contained or stored carbon from rotting organic material from the rotting ferns and probably moss and whatever was around. Um, and do you, that did cause that containment of the carbon was something that caused the weather to change, to
Yes, it
become
did.
cooler. Yeah.
Not in weather,
Can
climate.
you explain? Yeah. Can you explain? Yes, we have to distinguish between climate and weather. Climate is a more long-term matter, isn't it? Weather is the individual fluctuations within that. Is that how you describe it?
That's a quick way to do it. Sure.
Okay.
Climate determines your weather. Your weather is like if you know your calculus, weather is one integration and climate is the curve.
Right.
So
Okay.
climate integrates over all the weather.
Contains
and
it. Yeah.
The weather creates what we perceive as climate.
Interesting. So, can you explain to us, as mere laymen here, what caused this cooling in your view back then? Okay, as in like this containment of carbon. Why did the Earth cool?
The Earth cooling is pretty well understood. Again, a lot of CO2 was pulled out of the atmosphere all the time that plants owned the Earth. There came a point where the plants didn't own the Earth anymore, so they couldn't really do that. But they had pulled enough CO2 out of the atmosphere. And all that CO2 came from volcanoes, which didn't go away. So we still had volcanic activity. But and there was even some volcanic activity that set the Earth back by releasing CO2. But the secular trend would have been that plants were constantly removing CO2. CO2 was being entrained or included into a much richer and bigger biosphere. The biosphere on Earth got huge. Plants, animals, forests, in the oceans, on the land, everywhere except on the moon.
The CO2 left the atmosphere or started leaving the atmosphere and becoming contained in a subterranean trap of like dead plant material, but also part of life itself. Life itself contained a lot of CO2 as well.
Yeah, and life was learning
carbon, it. Sorry, carbon.
Carbon, right?
Yeah.
And via CO2, that's one pathway.
Yeah.
And life had also learned a trick because animals showed up. So plants and animals started cycling carbon between the two of them. It's not sequestered, but it's rotating rapidly.
Mm-hmm.
It's like two people who buy each other's products, but nothing else.
But that would have had a neutral effect on the overall carbon in the atmosphere, or because it would have stayed the same because it was on the ground? Or
after it pulled it out of the atmosphere, it then cycled rapidly inside the biosphere. So it's a form of sequestration. And the more bio you have, the more it just stays in the biosphere. So a tree would fall, and rather than over the course of a decade get washed out to sea and buried and make a coal seam eventually, that tree would be attacked by termites and other saprophytic organism to decay it. And then it just gets released back into the atmosphere immediately. And in geologic time, the the difference in time between a tree falling and the entire tree re-entering the atmosphere is like a blink of an eye or less. It's the thought of a blink of an eye. So, but when we had a very rich and dynamic biosphere, that began to sequester in living tissues a lot of carbon. Now, as this continued, and as volcanoes didn't change what they were doing, as important as that is, then the amount of carbon in the atmosphere began to drop. Now, carbon dioxide is an important, it's even the key greenhouse gas. And the greenhouse effect was something that has been known since the early 1800s. Fourier, I think, was the first guy to say, hey, there's a greenhouse effect. We should think about that. And then Svante Arrhenius came along and said, yes, this is what it actually does to the Earth. So we've known for a long time this thing called the greenhouse effect, which means that the atmosphere is not as transparent to heat going out as it is to light coming in. And so the atmosphere traps heat. I think it was Fourier who calculated that the Earth is 60 or 70 degrees Fahrenheit warmer than it would otherwise be, because, and not just because of the atmosphere, because the atmosphere could be completely transparent to heat, but it's not, because there are heat absorbing gases in the atmosphere. It is not as transparent to heat energy as it might otherwise as be. So the heat starts to accumulate. And so when there's a lot of CO2, like there would have been in the past, the Earth was very hot. I think I'm trying to get to your point here.
Yeah.
The Earth was very hot. There was no ice anywhere on the planet, not even at the poles. And the continents, as they are now, were not like they were back then. But there was no ice anywhere on any landmass near any pole. It was impossible. Too hot. But at the same time that the CO2 is being gradually brought down by this biosphere that's just working really hot and using all that carbon dioxide to do its biochemistry, essentially. Carbon is the key element in biochemistry. If you have more life, you need more carbon. And the only source of carbon is either the atmosphere via plants or other organisms eating each other. Okay. At the same time all that was going on, and your question was, where does the cooling come from? At the same time all that was going on, there was a completely parallel, unrelated phenomenon. It has to do with Earth, Sun, orbital mechanics. And we didn't even discover this properly until the last half of the last century, because it took high-speed computers to do the math. It turns out that the Earth doesn't just go around the sun like the model of the Earth in your 5th grade classroom, where it just goes around the sun like this. The orbit is elliptical, so sometimes it's closer, sometimes it's further. The Earth itself has a tilt on its axis, which gives us the seasons. The tilt also changes in subtle way. So sometimes the northern hemisphere is pointing a little more towards the sun, and sometimes the axis tilts and it's pointing a little away from the sun.
What causes that again, brother? Because I've heard about, is that anything to do with the pole shifts? Is there anything related to that? Or is it totally different?
Nothing to do with that. It's easy to confuse the two, though.
Yeah.
The pole, I don't want to talk about that right now. Let me finish this thought. This is orbital mechanics. The Earth is a rock, and it goes around a gas ball called the sun, and there's an orbit that it makes around this. This is all Newtonian physics. Okay, it's all Newtonian physics as modified by Albert Einstein and orbital mechanics. But there's some of it has to do with, at one time in the Earth's evolution, it was hit by a planetoid called Theia. And it was hit at an angle really hard by this planetoid that shared the same orbit as the Earth. It spun off the moon. It was so big a hit, and it caused the Earth forevermore to oscillate back and forth in its orbit. Okay. And so because we got hit by Theia, the Earth's mechanics are essentially broken. But the name we give to this entire study and the attributions of it that we determined much later using much better space theory and computers, what is the Milankovitch cycles, named after Milankovitch, Polish, maybe a Pole. I can't remember now who that person actually was. Milankovitch. But the work was done relatively recently, and when Milankovitch came up with his it's a fluid model of Earth orbital mechanics that sometimes the Earth is closer to the sun, sometimes it's further away. We know these things. We can measure the distance, but also the Earth's axis tilts in a rhythmic, uh, like a clock ticking, like the pendulum of a clock. It goes back and forth, and it'll never stop because there's no friction in space, so it's just oscillates back and forth and back and forth. And when he did the calculations and they came up with these, they discovered something that they had been trying to find the answer to for a long time, which is why are the glacial maxima cyclical? Why are the glacial, which some people call ice ages, there's one ice age and it has all these cyclical glacial maxima events. Why are they periodic, predictable? Why? And no one could really figure that out because it didn't make any sense. There's nothing else about the Earth that's periodic. We don't have periodic volcanic eruptions and then none, and then more, and then none. There's nothing. But when Milankovitch came up with orbital mechanics, he says, look, the tilt of the Earth toward the sun will mean that the northern hemisphere, which is where most of the land masses are, gets preferentially heated a few percent more than when the Earth is tilted, when the axis is tilted away. And so that becomes, that's Earth, that's mechanics. That has nothing to do with carbon cycle or the biosphere or erosion or volcanoes or anything else. This is what the Earth is doing. If the Earth had no water, no life, no atmosphere, it would still be doing these things. This is orbital mechanics. This is Newtonian dynamics. So when they realized suddenly that a mechanism, Ermagerd, we can now explain why the glacial maxima and minima are cyclical and follow a very distinctive, predictable pattern. They suddenly understood. So the cold phases, the warm phases of the Earth, there's always the Milankovitch cycles to help explain why the northern hemisphere is sometimes a little warmer or a little colder. And then on top of that, there's the secular decline. It's all very complicated. I'm sorry.
It's cool. You're doing a very good job of explaining it all.
Good. I also had a career as a teacher for a short time. That there's a secular decline in CO2 levels in the atmosphere. I haven't heard any numbers. My guess is that CO2 levels in the atmosphere were probably up around 2,000 parts per million for most of Earth's history, maybe more at various times, because there have been some really massive volcanic events that did change the Earth's climate in a big way.
Right.
But right now, well, I should say right now, when we came out of the last ice age, I'm saying the same thing. It's not an ice age. It's a glacial maximum. When we came out of the last glacial maximum, the CO2 levels in the atmosphere were not 2,000 parts per million or 3,000. They were like 180 or 200. That level of CO2 in the atmosphere is not good at warming the Earth. It can do it. And Fourier calculated it'll give you 60, 70 degrees. But when there's more, the Earth is much hotter.
Right.
Really hot. You can't have ice anywhere on the planet. Okay. It's hard to have ice even now in the Holocene where we are between glacial maxima. We are at a minima. So the Earth is as warm as it's going to get, except for what we've been doing. And so there's as little ice on the planet now as can be managed with the greenhouse effect we know today. That's a complicated thing to say, but
yeah, I've heard that before. Like the last time it was this temperature, there was no ice, right? Am I right to say that?
No.
Sorry.
Maybe that is true because there's a lag.
It's true. Okay.
Yeah, we are now at 430 parts per million of just CO2, and they calculate that. They measure that at the Mauna Loa volcano. They used to until the Trump administration pulled their lease. Now they'll have to do it somewhere else.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's okay.
I have to apologize for America. I'm really sorry, people. So we're currently about 430 parts per million, contrasted with say 200 parts per million. And the what is Bill McKibben's 350.org? Bill McKibben 350.org. They would like to see the Earth back to 350 parts per million. They think that maybe is sustainable. But at 430 parts per million, which is way too much. Okay, oh God. To your point, we may be at a point now where we cannot have ice anywhere on the planet.
Mm.
It's going to take a while for that ice to melt, though.
Mm.
The ice, the water,
Yeah.
including in ice form, has an amazingly high specific heat. It takes a lot of heat to melt a pot of ice. If you took a pot of ice, took water, put it in the freezer, brought it out, put it on the stovetop, it would take a long time to melt that.
It takes a surprising amount of time. Yeah, it does.
You would think it would be surprising. You'd be like,
it is surprising. Yeah.
I would think that would melt instantly. No, you're putting a huge amount of energy into it.
Well, there's weird chemistry going on, isn't there? Where there's subclimates in there, and the ice is cooling. The melting water is creating a microclimate that is causing freezing. Yeah. It's very strange, but yeah, it is very, very unusual.
It is complicated, and trying to model all this stuff inside the Earth dynamic system, which of course is a field, climate modeling is a thing. We hear about it all the time. It's very difficult. It's really, really hard, and I'll be honest. I don't hold out any hope for that particular approach. We are not modeling the Earth dynamic system as it's changing. We just can't do it, even with the computers, even with the PhDs, even with all of the the new math and the satellite data. We can't do it. It's too complicated and it's changing too fast. We're barely able to keep up with the changes as they're happening, least of all projecting into the future. It's practically hopeless. And I'm not saying that
this is all happening, as you've said, because of anthropocentric matters. It's because we've been sucking out the carbon out of the ground and burning it, basically.
Yeah.
That's why this is happening.
Yes, that is why. And, the Milankovitch cycle is such that we did leave an ice age. So there's that. And people in the 70s, I don't know if you remember this, I think it was Time Magazine back in the 70s said, Earth will go through another ice age. And people are, of course, shocked to hear that because normalcy bias. What ice age? I'll see in the ice age. But what they were doing was they were revealing to the world their work on the Milankovitch cycles. And the ice ages, glacial maxima and minima, are cyclical. So in the 70s, they were saying there's this cyclical thing. But what no one was looking at the time, not many anyway, definitely the oil companies were looking at it, but not the rest of us, there was this countervailing force of increasing CO2 levels in the atmosphere, reversing a 300 million year trend and doing it in 30 years, basically.
Wow.
We are going to burn a lot of CO2 containing things. We are going to burn a lot of fossil fuels. I mean, a lot. And it's, sorry, folks, it's grim. I'll say it's grim. What else can I say? It's grim. Our options, our opportunities are not good at this point because that's what we're doing. And we're not stopping at 430 parts per million. We're not stopping at 500. We're not stopping at 600. We're probably not stopping until 1,000. And probably the reason we stop is because we just can't do it anymore, which is what the book was about, I guess.
Yeah. By the way, guys, I'm in discussion here with CougarW. I will share his YouTube channel below this video in the description. I'm going to share it in the live chat now as well. So do subscribe to his channel. He has also written a book if you're interested on these matters. It's called It Was 100 Days. It's available on Amazon, is it? Or where is it available?
Yes. Amazon. Amazon as a Kindle ebook format, which you can read on devices other than a Kindle if you have a reader. And then it's also available in paperback and hardcover. Same material. Same material.
So exactly. So I hope, guys, you go away and purchase that and let me know what you think of it.
Please do.
Yeah. It sounds to me then you're kind of saying we're fucked in not so many, in a more eloquent way.
Yeah. No, that's not eloquent enough. I don't know how you would eloquently say we're fucked.
Yeah.
We're doomed.
Yeah.
You say we're doomed. Is that more eloquent?
I mean, is it just explain to me then what is going on right now, okay? And just go ahead and tell us. I can understand. Look, you've explained how it happens, what the carbon cycle is and all of that, right? Thanks for that. Now you've explained what we've done to disrupt the climate. Yeah, you've explained that. Can you explain what is actually going on right now in this world, presently, in relation to this matter. Go into as much detail. I know it's kind of an open question in many ways. Go to as much detail as you want, as in factually, in terms of the environment, the climate, but also maybe politically, scientifically, academically, and maybe even in terms of the media. Whatever comes to your mind, brother.
I have one word for you. You weren't ready for that. I have one word for you. Maybe two. Two words for you. Blind panic.
Blind panic.
Blind panic. We are in a blind panic. And let me explain why those two words are important. Blind means you're so frightened you can't see. People, when they're terrified, will run into danger. They're blind to everything except flight. We are in a blind panic. The situation, as revealed through science, and there's not a lot of revelation going on, but in the few places, sad to say, few places where the science is being revealed, and the few places where organizations, and I would say the insurance companies, are actually asking for the truth, the situation is grim. Grim. We are in a grim situation. Now, blind panic manifests itself differently depending on who you are, what your risk profile is, what you think you have to lose, and what you are prepared to lose. Everyone panics differently. People, like in the insurance industries, and this is not common knowledge. You may actually want to have someone on who can tell you what's happening in the insurance industries. I can give you my immediate take on it. The insurance industry is all about assessing and mitigating risk. The insurance industry, I don't mean a company or a segment. The entire insurance industry is about to implode. The risks that they are now facing, and they have actuaries who have very sharp pencils who want to know the risk. They don't want to know about the economics or the politics or, we're not MAGA here. We have a sharp pencil and we're trying to figure out the risk so we can charge insurance premiums that will offset the risk. The risks are so bad that
they can't insure it.
That the insurance industry is about to go completely underwater. They won't exist. That's my prediction.
I imagine this is probably already happening in places like Florida and stuff, where.
Oh, absolutely. And that was a good guess. Florida used to be a highly attractive state for people who wanted to retire or just vacation, and they would buy second homes in Florida. My brother-in-law has a second home in Florida, but the cost of insurance in Florida is so bad now that people are having to leave. There's an exodus of really climate refugees, U.S. citizens that are climate refugees who are leaving Florida because they can't afford the insurance. They can't get it at all. The insurers just simply say, we're not even going to offer you an insurance because we don't even know what we should be charging you. You could lose there are homes in Florida being lost every 3 years. Every 3 years. Now, this is storm surge, hurricanes, torrential rains, straight line winds, the amount of violence in the atmosphere. I'm going to have to keep bringing it back to this. The amount of violence in the Earth dynamic system that is created through global heating, the amount of excess energy that has nowhere to go, that is trying to reapportion and balance itself across the entire planetary surface. That type of energy is hitting Florida and similar places like Texas, Louisiana, and all across the Mediterranean, right? That same area, the amount of energy that is available in these systems to do work, as we like to say in physics, is simply unhinged. It's incomprehensible. And the insurance industry is giving us a signal that we can't cope. They are their panic is not blind. They study climate change. They know. And
now, in terms of this insurance, is this like people trying to insure for like 10 years time, 50 years time? Like, what is the what? Like, it can't be like year by year. Surely it's
It
surely people
is.
long.
Yeah,
Wow.
it is. Here in America, maybe it's probably is different in other countries, but here
Hmm.
in America, you have basically a 1-year contract
Right.
for insurance.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
not like a mortgage where you buy
Mm.
your insurance up front and then you have it for 20 years or 30 years. You get renewed every
Every.
year.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
Most
that's generally the
years,
way policies are here as well. Yeah.
I think so, but I
Yeah.
don't know for a fact.
But
But it makes sense.
I'm imagining there may be different policies if you're building, say, a shopping center or a big development, that you're going to have some kind of insurance that it will work out for the next 20 years and you'll be able to cover the cost of, say, the loan or whatever. You know what I mean? When things like that come into consideration, like a 20, 50-year loan, they're going to start, that's going to be insured, you see?
Yeah.
And then they'll start looking at, well, is this development going to work out? So in those situations, I imagine that's when the climate change starts being looked at.
Yes. But the prospect for a company to have a long-term relationship with a customer who's buying a policy is misaligned with the scope of these disasters. You can have a home, and this has happened in Florida many times, especially on the west side, the Gulf side. You can have homes in Florida that are destroyed every 3 years, knocked off their foundations. So you want to have a long-term relationship with that customer, but your risk must be assessed every year. And that might not even be often enough. We're getting changes in our climate that are happening so rapidly on such a compressed time scale that even 1 year out is the sense I'm getting from the insurance industry. Even 1 year out is not enough time to model and assess their risk. They don't want to issue policies for a year. A year's a long goddamn time in this changing climate. And things are happening and they're like, we issued a policy for $200 a month and now we're having to pay out $110,000 on this policy, and we're never going to make that money back. California was bankrupt.
To the uninitiated, this is overwhelming.
Oh, this is apocalyptic.
Yeah, can you maybe give us a debriefing in terms of what you view as climatic catastrophes that have happened, I don't know, in the last 5 years or whatever, or in the recent, last year, 2 years, whatever, stuff, maybe not necessarily catastrophes, but, evidence of temperature change, water levels, whatever it is, we would appreciate it.
Sure. It is difficult to assess what's really happening to us because the media doesn't really cover it a lot of the times. Like in the US, we never hear about the floods in China and, what's happening in parts of Africa. I know Africa's not a country, but the media isn't interested in talking about harms due to climate change because they don't buy it. They're corporations and they don't want to hear it. To them, it's all weather. So you're going to have a hard time unless you're paying attention to European media. DW is pretty good. BBC is actually really good about covering what's really happening, meaning this was a terrible event and it can be attributed to global heating, climate change. And you, by the way, I will continue with your question. I don't call it climate change. That's BS. Okay. I don't do that. I call it global heating.
Okay.
Climate change is nebulous, and it's meant to be. There's been a lot of sandbagging around this whole discussion. It's why I do my channel, because I don't sandbag. I'm a scientist and I just lay it out. It's global heating.
Climate change doesn't distinguish the fact that it is heating rather than cooling.
Yeah.
Overall.
Climate change is trying to say something about the Earth dynamic system, and we just don't know enough. It's unpredictable.
But you're saying there's enough evidence to say it's heating. It's heating. It's all heating.
That's physics. That's the physics, and it's instrumental. We can actually take a thermometer. What's the temperature? Okay, there is no instrument for what's the climate? I don't know. We just can't do it. The climate is always changing. The seasons, some years it rains more than others. Okay, that's climate, but we know the Earth is heating. It's global heating, and you call it global warming if you want to, but I'm not alone. in believing that doesn't transmit the urgency of the moment. Global warming. Oh, it'd be nice to have some warmer winters. And no, we're heating. We're going to cook. We are actually cooking. And you mentioned, okay, so what disasters have we had? There are now storm events all over the world that are almost unfathomable, incomprehensible. They've been having here in the U.S. We hear a lot about them. There was and you can always look at the individual things. You say, oh, that's a one-off. It's not. It's never a one-off anymore. When it rains in the dry areas of Texas, where all those children were swept away, that was kind of globally handled as an event.
That was brutal. Yeah.
Yeah, that was really sad. That area was called, it was the Guadalupe River in Texas. That area was called Flash Flood Alley. They knew. But what they weren't ready for is the current Earth system dumping 10 inches of rain in Flash Flood Alley and basically destroying the countryside. That was it. Just destroyed the countryside. And they just weren't ready for it. They didn't even take it seriously. I have nothing but condemnation for the pinhead idiots in Texas who just didn't take it seriously. They just didn't. They refuse to believe it. They're denialists, and they just refuse to believe it. Normalcy bias. This can't happen to us. It'll happen to Pakistan, but it can't happen to us. And it happened to them. And they were caught completely on the wrong foot. And
do you think that's what it is? Do you think it's like the rich are confident in their ability to survive? Right? They think that we'll come up with something like to survive. They'll be okay. They'll be protected from this. And that's why they don't really push it, because it will affect their corporate interests. Like they're confident in their survival. Like, so what if we have to move to a different part of the globe? You know, so what if we have to build higher buildings to escape the water? Whatever it is, we'll survive. What is going on there?
I don't think they're having those thoughts at all, to be honest. People, how to say this? People are chimps. People don't understand physics. They don't understand Milankovitch cycles. They don't understand CO2, what that is, or CO2 in the atmosphere. What's the atmosphere? They don't understand the greenhouse effect. I know what a greenhouse effect is. What's that got to do with the atmosphere? They just don't get it. Our education systems are not up to this. When did we start teaching physics, which is what this is? This is physics. And, last year of high school, right? First semester in college, if you're in that academic path, not if you're a nurse or a writer, right? Only if you're in the hard sciences, your first year in college, they'll teach you something about physics, and maybe you'll learn something about atmospheric warming, maybe, probably not. We're just not ready for this. Our politicians aren't ready. Very few segments of our economy are ready. The insurance industry absolutely is ready. They are absolutely in a massive panic right now, trying to get out of the way of this thing. Why are people not taking effective actions? Why did the authorities in Texas not get those children out of the way of that flood? That has nothing to do with, oh, well, someday we'll build on a higher ground and we'll put up walls to keep the flood. That's just denial. That's just just don't get it. I don't know how to say it.
Is it a case perhaps that people don't act until it affects them? And if you're cushioned from this, well, then you won't do much about it. It's like, is that some of it? Human nature.
I would like to think that if I was feeling optimistic, and I want to full disclosure, I am not. I have seen the light. I am not optimistic. But if I was optimistic, then I would say, oh, sure. Once enough people, rich, poor, black, white, economic status, whatever, see the light. Like the flood just took away half my neighborhood. All my neighbors are gone. See the light, that they will react accordingly. They won't. And there's compelling reasons for them not to react accordingly, which is why I think nobody will ever react accordingly. The reactions we will see to that, this sounds very down, and I'm very misanthropic and all these things. No, I'm not. I'm a scientist, and I'm watching people, and I understand something about human behavior. I'm tuned into human behavior, and they won't react. They won't. And part of that is normalcy bias. Look that up. We have that discussion. I'm not a
Yeah, I know
psychoanalyst.
about that. Yeah, I know about that.
Yeah, you probably would.
Yeah.
That's more your field. Normalcy bias is amazingly destructive.
Mm.
Alcoholics, drug addicts, normalcy bias ruins them. Okay.
Hmm.
But there's also denial. And
Exactly.
denial in this world, and it's not just the US and MAGA, Trump, this has been going on a
Mm.
long time. Okay. Oh, and it's not the fossil fuel industry. We're all in this denial thing.
Terror
All in denial.
management theory, basically, kind of creeping in. Like, people, it's so scary that people don't want to think about it. You know.
Yeah, and
In
there's
a way.
something else too that exacerbates all of this. It exacerbates the normalcy bias and the denial, and that's the helplessness. To be quite honest, and
Oof.
again, this is in the book, so I
Hmm.
dealt with this quite a bit. I really thought about this. I'm a scientist, okay? I'm a teacher. I
Hmm.
kind of have the tools to think about this. They are helpless, and they are helpless because they are helpless. It's not even a matter of money, although it is money. So the wealthy, to your earlier point, the rich, the 1% of the 1% have some tools to solve some part of this impending disaster for some parts of their life. They have some of the tools for some part of this to be salvaged for some of the people. This is very nebulous because the tools you would have to have cannot be purchased. They don't exist. Elon Musk is trying to take himself and his entourage to fucking Mars, okay? And not doing very well at it. Oh, by the way, not having an
Yes.
easy time of it, okay? He hadn't even got there
No.
yet. And then when he gets there, he's got
Yeah.
a whole nother set of things to do.
You know, I'm, you know, as a side note, this isn't the top of the conversation, but what do you think of his likelihood of attaining that goal? I think it's a load of bullshit. I don't think it's ever going to happen. But what do you think?
I think it's not off topic. It seems like it is, but it's not.
Okay, go for it.
He is going to fail at some point. Right now, he's failing at the first step out of the door, right? He's failing. He is going to fail miserably at some point. The reason why he's doing this and the reason why he is desperate for this to work, and that is the way to look at Elon Musk and what he's doing. Oh, and Jeff Bezos and all the others, they're desperate for this to work. They're throwing everything they've got at it. They are no holds barred, you know, throw caution to the wind. The reason they're doing this is they are desperate to get off of this rock.
Yeah.
They know these guys, they're not stupid and they're not in denial. They won't talk about it, but they're not in denial. They know. They're like the insurance industry. They buy the reports. They read the reports. There are rich people right now trying to find out where they're going to put their bunker. Okay. It's all going to fail. All of it is going to fail, and not for technological reasons and not because it's hard to get to Mars, although there is that. It's all going to fail because our current civilization is in a process. We are in a process funnel. We are now in the funnel. We are going down the path to absolute devastating collapse. They don't have time.
So it's going to get so bad so quickly that we won't be able to organize our society to carry out these huge projects.
No.
That quickly.
Yes. And that's not because I'm a doomer, because I'm not.
Can you explain the kind of timeline for that then, in your view?
I'll try. It's, of course, this is all now Nostradamus prognostication. None of us can do this very well. But based on the latest science, in particular work done by James Hansen, in his retirement, which is the only time he could do good work, and he'll tell you that, self-funded science by James Hansen, plus observations of what's happening in the world. And we kind of got started on what is going on in the world. It's a long list, people. Oh my God, it's bad. It's all bad. And because of the research that we know is happening, that's coming out, and the things that are actually happening in the world right now, on the ground, in the headlines, we are out of time. It's here. It's here. It's not 2050. It's not 2100. It's not 2040. It's not 2030. It's now. Now, having said that the situation right now is bad, really bad. The insurance industry knows how bad it is. They are about to be annihilated by claims or just not being able to write policies. If they can't write policies, they have no business model. So they're done. They're basically done. When you see these kinds of things happening in the real world, actual physics, actual disasters, actual insurance company failures, actual financial system failures, when you see this happening, you have to step back and say, okay, how can we get insurance to cover risks of funding projects that will save any of us? The Titanic has hit the iceberg. Either you have the lifeboats now or you don't. The time to make lifeboats for the Titanic would have been back in port before you left. Now we're out here in the middle of the North Atlantic on the Earth dynamic system, and we've hit the climate iceberg. Now we're done. So do we have enough lifeboats to get everyone off this ship and into a completely different situation? No, we don't. Do we have any lifeboats to get anybody off of this sinking tub to into a different situation? No, we don't. Will we have lifeboats? On the Titanic, they were throwing tables and chairs made of wood into the water to kind of try and something that floats for people. Will we do that? Yeah, maybe. Maybe we'll do that. We'll throw floating tables and chairs into the water that people can cling to and try to survive, because we have nothing, folks. I'm telling you right now, we have nothing. We got nothing. And one of the things I discuss in the book.
Yes. I've shared it in the links, guys. I've shared it. I'll share it again. Please get the book, because it was 100 days on Amazon, and I will put it below the video. But yeah, support this man.
I appreciate that. And I'm not here to pitch my book, because I like this discussion, this unformatted discussion. But I will say that when I wrote the book, from the perspective of there is no lifeboat on this Titanic. Now that's defeatist. That's doomerism. That's, I've been looking around, and the thing that would constitute a lifeboat for our situation doesn't exist. Elon Musk is going to fucking Mars, okay, with urgency. It's not working, but he is throwing everything he has at it to get off this rock, and he'll tell you that's why he's doing it. We need a planet B. We are a single planet species, and we're about to be, and he won't say what, but we are about to be unmade. That's why he's going to Mars. That's why he will keep trying to get to Mars. I can tell you he's not going to get to Mars. He's going to be stuck on Earth with the rest of us rats on this sinking ship. And he's going to have to figure out his plan B. I don't know what it's going to be. For a lot of these people, it's a fortress compound in the Andes? I don't know. They're trying to get away from climate. They're trying to get away from their fellow apes. They're trying to get some arable land that people aren't going to raid at night to get their food. They're trying to figure this out as quickly as they can, and they're failing to do it, because I'm telling you.
But people like him. Yeah, but people like him probably will see out their natural life on this planet, right? I mean, would you say most of us will see out our natural life? That this is, although shit is going to hit the fan, you see like most Westerners living out their natural life. Maybe a few. There might be a few catastrophes like hurricanes and floods here and there, like what has happened in America. But on the whole, most people will live out their natural life. This shit is coming down the road in terms of within this, like the end of the century, perhaps, or what is the prognosis in that regard?
Okay, so I have a slightly longer answer, because if I were to just say something, it would be dismissed as hyperbole or impossibility. So I'm going to set context, and then I'm going to give you my answer. So this is the process. Humanity lives in a built environment. We are 100%, all of us, except maybe some Laplanders in Finland. We are all of us dependent 100% of the time for 100% of our things, every day, every moment of every day, on the built environment. The nearest equivalent is a tiger living in a zoo. A tiger is very capable of feeding itself. In fact, it can eat the humans that are in the zoo, but it can't eat humans in the zoo because it's in a grotto and it can't get out. We are like that tiger. We could figure this out, but we can't, because we're trapped in a built environment. That built environment is dependent on constant input of materials, of critical importance to our survival. The water at the tap, most people don't even know where that comes from. The food on the shelves, they never question it. The gasoline that you put in your petrol, that you put in your gas tank, your diesel, whatever, to get anywhere, no one questions where it comes from. They only question the price. We are subject in our built environment to constant 24/7 inputs of everything we need to survive on a daily basis. I'm not talking about sneakers. I'm not talking about a car or an EV or anything else. I'm talking about every single day. You need water at the tap, and it has to be at the tap. And you need food on the shelves, and it must be on the shelves, and it must be a lot, and it must be available to everybody. And as soon as anything happens to disrupt the constant 24/7 inputs of material support into the built environment, everybody dies. Everybody dies. They can't get out. They won't get out. And this sounds horrific. And this sounds unbelievable. This is like Mad Max. It's like the zombie apocalypse.
Yeah.
I don't care about fiction. I'm telling you how you live your life. And when those supply chains start to collapse, the UK grows what, 40% of their own food? Something like that?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, it's not a good number, people. Not happy, okay? Not a happy scenario. I don't mean to be mean to the UK. I'm a scientist. I'm data-driven. I'm just saying it how it is. And when the supply chains for anything become interrupted, people will perish. And it won't be in the year 2100. It'll happen when the supply chains become interrupted, period. And a lot of things can interrupt the supply chains. Ask the Europeans, the mainland Europeans, how that's working for their natural gas and their oil shipments from Russia. Ask them how that's working out. Ask the Indians how that's working out for them. China is in massive collapse right now.
Indeed. Do you think there's like stockpiling or like there's reasonable foreseeability here amongst some quarters who have inside knowledge? No? Okay.
Nothing. There's nothing.
Nothing.
Now, to our earlier conversation, if Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos or the equivalent decide that they want to have a compound somewhere in Amazonia where they can live out their lives in comfort, could one person stockpile enough gasoline and diesel to sustain them for the rest of their natural life? Yeah, sure. One person. Sure, maybe. Not gasoline, because gasoline actually degrades. They'd have to use diesel, and hopefully that doesn't degrade. Maybe they could have their own refinery, some little tiny little cracking facility, right, where they could get a bunch of crude oil and store the crude oil. Crude oil probably stores okay. Then they crack the crude oil, but they have to have their own little refinery, and they have to have technicians, and of course it takes energy to run a refinery. Where's all that coming from? Do they have nuclear power? Maybe he electrifies his entire compound. Doesn't even deal with this stuff anymore. Electrifies. He's got solar panels. Maybe
it's
a modular nuclear reactor.
It's almost like they're accelerationists to some degree. They want to bring about the complete collapse.
Well, I was trying to make a point about how when this happens and how it happens, but that's an important continuation of that thought. So we can have supply chain interruptions anytime. COVID-19 gave us a preview of coming attractions, how that works. The collapse of China, that's now ongoing, will give us another little bit of a shock. It doesn't take much of a shock to interrupt enough supply chains and enough things that happen bad that people panic. And people will eventually, they can be out of touch with all this for a certain amount of time. But then at some point, everybody, and it's all at the same point, neighbors are talking, they're watching the news, they're talking to their family, talking to their spouse, and everyone decides at the same time that it's time to get out. I don't want to be stuck in this suburb when the axe falls on civilization. I don't want to be in this country. I don't want to be in this big urban area. I want to be out. I want to be out in the countryside. Everyone panics at the same time. Elon Musk didn't get to Mars. Okay. Jeff Bezos is looking around in his fancy suburb, his mansion in his suburb, and he's seeing people panicking all around him. He's seeing fires and people setting things on fire, looting. And it sounds like Mad Max, but it's panic. It's blind panic because people don't know what to do. No one's talked to them. No one's prepared them. No one said, hey, this is going to really leave a mark. You better, if you're going to make changes, you better make them now. Be where you need to be with who you need to be with now. Well, beat the rush, right? But nobody will do that because people don't do that. People don't act like that. They're not going to give up their job and their kids' school and the nice neighbors and the comfortable suburb and the KFC down the street. They're not going to give all that up. just because something CougarW is going on about, that madman, that savage, they're not going to give any of that up. But they will, because they have to when the supply chains break. And our built environment is so interwoven.
Sorry, go ahead.
Right?
We're so dependent on it. Like you're absolutely right. We are just
you have
the numbers.
You have
the numbers of people.
You have no story outside of the built environment. Even somebody living in the countryside in England, they still go into town. They're still getting their medications mailed to them.
Well, this is it. I mean, in terms of medication and stuff like that, most people, I mean, I've heard like there's a lot of people carrying comorbid conditions after the age of 50. You know what I mean? They have multiple conditions. Yeah. And a lot of people are on medication. So, yeah, it's going to be a shitty state of affairs, you know? For
everybody.
And obviously, when there is a collapse, that is a kind of prime time for some new kind of, because, you know, things like cholera, things, you know, diseases when people don't practice hygiene, all that stuff can start creeping out of the woodwork, you know? Yeah. I mean, I've also, you'll know more about me than this, but I've also heard there's other things going on here that could be extremely dangerous, like the permafrost melting in places like Siberia and such are releasing new virus or old viruses that we haven't been subjected to, our immune systems. Yeah. And bacteria and such. So who the fuck knows what's going to happen? But I want to bring you back to some environmental examples in terms of like, I mean, I've perused this stuff here and there, but I've heard about warming sea temperatures and stuff like that. What's the effect of this, you know, this global heating on the environment, on the sea, on the fauna and flora other than humans, you know, other than us? What's the effect of it on animals and other life that is, you know, that can exemplify how much trouble we're all in?
Yeah, well, I can start answering that by reminding everyone, and this is just a reminder, that we are in the early days of the 6th mass extinction. That is well established. Everyone should know that. If you didn't know that, now you know that. There have been 5 major extinctions on Earth, one of which, for example, is still called by, scientists, the Great Dying. So you can have changes in the Earth dynamic system that are so severe, maybe not rapid, but so severe in the end that organisms cannot evolve to the new conditions and they perish. Now, maybe there are a few generalists that don't perish, and then they become the next clade to create the rest of to rebuild the tree of life, right? They become the last branch to rebuild the tree of life. That can happen. I'm a biologist. I have a master's degree in biology. I did field work in nature, and I have always been an environmentalist. And I can tell you right now, I don't give a fig what happens in the environment as regards to the 6th mass extinction. I am completely overwhelmed what's going to happen to us. This is not a situation where the 6th mass extinction proceeds and those of us that cared about the squids and the whales and the penguins, and we all sit around, drinking our tea and weeping and dabbing at our eyes because of no, we're all going to be dead. We're going to be pushing up daisies. We have a much bigger problem. And the problem is, and I don't know how to say this nicely, the problem is that we have been trained to focus on externalities like the extinction of the penguins in the Arctic to the exclusion of our own self-preservation.
No, that I agree with you. No, my question, sorry, I didn't really word my question properly. I want to just talk about maybe the collapse of ecosystems or particular species that is going to have an effect on us. For example, I've heard that insects are going by the wayside in general, because of what's going on. I've heard that sea temperatures are rising and that's causing basically algae to die off. I've heard that, and that's obviously critical for not only life in the ocean, but also the creation of oxygen. You know, I've heard this as well, and also the removal of CO2. I believe, am I right?
Yeah.
So all these things I've heard about, and that's what I was getting to. Have you?
Okay.
Can you give us a few examples of, you know, clear signs that there's danger afoot, or there's doom afoot, or that the end is nigh, because of environmental occurrences?
Okay. So to restate, the question is, what risks are there in the intersection of human life with nature, and the loss of nature affects human life?
Yeah, and again, where is it? Where is it evident that it's happening? That
Okay.
kind of thing. Yeah.
So I'm not going to answer this question in the way that you want, because
That's fine.
I think the question, while well intended, is the wrong question. What is happening to nature doesn't have nearly as much effect on humans as naturalists are pretending. I'm a naturalist, really. They have a business model to preserve nature, to make documentaries about nature, to take money from people who are concerned about the penguins, and take donations, and all of that is fine. To answer your direct question, what is happening in nature that will affect humans? The answer is virtually nothing. Almost nothing. People will, to state differently, people will absolutely sacrifice 100% of nature in the sixth mass extinction. They absolutely will do that. The problem is not what parts of losing nature. So I'm not answering this question the way you want.
That's fine.
The way it needs to be answered. What part of the loss of nature will affect humans? Yes, we've heard about the insect apocalypse. Pollinators, okay, we'll go with that. I have news for you. Every significant commercial crop that needs a pollinator to be pollinated could be genetically engineered to self-pollinate. Every single one. Now, they're not doing that research now because they don't need to. Pollinators are free. Why spend money making self-pollinating commercial crops? But they will, and they'll do it in a year. And that'll be a big selling point. Don't need pollinators. And focusing on how the destruction of nature and the sixth mass extinction is going to impact humans doesn't cut it. I'm going to come back to my original thesis. Humanity is doomed. Our supply of food is going to be the first rug pull. The first rug pull, because we don't have the right technology, is going to be crop failure. Because it gets so hot, and I don't mean dry, hot, just the instrumental temperature, that the plants can't grow. These are what we call C3 plants. Their carbon pathway is a 3-carbon pathway. And the C3 plants are the most abundant plants. C4 plants came later. Look it up. It's actually
I've seen that stuff, and there's no way around it. Genetically modifying like plant seeds to like deal with these temperatures.
No.
No. And there's no way around. Like it's a logistical nightmare, because even if there was one region in the globe that was hospitable, I mean, there's humans all over the globe, so we need our food, and it's just going to be a nightmare.
I actually do a chapter in the book on near-term human extinction. It's done. The book has chapters for each day, but the author of the journal that is the book, the author of the journal, who is basically myself, or at least has my background, breaks the flow of the journalism to insert subchapters on topics of greater interest than just today we dug a well. Okay. And one of the subchapters is on near-term human extinction. And what causes humans to become extinct is that the C3 plants, okay, the book does not take place in the middle of an extinction, but the author of the journal says that if human extinction were to happen, it's because the C3 plants that have that carbon pathway to do their respiration, without which they can do nothing. They can't make roots, they can't make flowers, they can't do anything. As the earth heats, the zone of the earth, the latitude, if you like, in North America, the latitude where plants can survive in the heat will move north. The problem with moving north is that the planet, which is widest at the equator, becomes smaller as you go north, until finally, when you get to the North Pole, it's a theoretical point. It has no area of any kind. And worse than that, the North Pole is in the middle of an ocean. So there's a point as the temperatures crawl northward, as the planet heats, and the equator becomes simply uninhabitable. All humans die. They just die of the heat. They don't die of starvation. They don't die of water. They just die of the wet bulb temperature. They just die. People have to leave. And of course, the 1% leave and they head north. And as everybody heads north, and as the growing zone heads north, then it runs into the boreal forest, which is not going anywhere. I mean, it's actively burning, but right now it's just a boreal forest. You go north of the Canadian border, the amount of agricultural land they have is piss poor. Most of the agricultural land in the world is in the northern hemisphere, and most of that is between certain latitudes, because that's where the boreal forest is not. And as you go north, you run into the boreal forest. The boreal forest is like a lot of other forests, like a lot of other rainforests. It has a lot of trees and no soil. So as you get north, you're going to have to burn all those trees down.
And
I
it's
don't
going to
know.
exacerbate matters. That's going to make matters worse.
Yeah.
So,
And
yeah.
exactly, right? You just shot yourself in the other foot. You have to burn all these trees down. You have to create soil, which is generational work. Okay, now we're talking about geology. You have to create soil, and then you have to start planting your crops. But even the area is smaller. You don't have the width of the North American continent for your crops. You have whatever little bit you could carve out of the northern boreal forest in Canada, assuming the Canadians will let you do that. And the other boreal forest is in Russia and China. Europe doesn't even have it anymore because they cut it all down. It's in Russia and China. So as the heat advances north, you're going to have to either go to the Canadians or go to the Russians and ask them to let you cut down their trees and create croplands.
I mean, you've made me think of something. You've made me think of something that has broached my interest or thoughts. And that is climatic wars brought about by climatic situations. Do you foresee this kind of thing, like governments going to war with each other? I mean, it seems like an inevitability. Yeah.
Oh, hell yeah. You're seeing some of that now. Let me give you some context. Trump wants Greenland. He wants it. He's going to get it. Trump has picked a fight with Canada. He wants Canada. He's going to get that. What do you think this is about? These people, they may be in denial. They're not stupid.
People are saying it's about rare materials, like oil and some kind of, I don't know, fucking lithium. I don't know what the fuck they're saying, but
okay, they're going to say all this stuff to get some buy-in, right? They're going to get some buy-in. Well, what it's really about is that the southern lower third of the United States of America, U.S. southern states, including the lower third of Southern California, is going to become uninhabitable for human purposes in the next few to 10 years. It's already started. All those people have to go somewhere. They would like to send them to Canada. What can I say? They'd like to send them to Canada with their chainsaws and their heavy equipment and clear the forest and beat the Canadians up, clear the forest, and start over. They want to send them to Canada because they can't keep them in the lower third of the U.S. It's done. The lower third of the U.S. is absolutely finished. But the same applies to the lower third of the European subcontinent. They are finished, people. They're finished. Portugal, Spain, south of France, Italy, Greece, Turkey, they're done. They're just done. They're done. They're done. They have no future. And their future ended probably 2 years ago. They have to get out. They must leave. Well, it's just some flooding and some fires. It's getting hot. The Mediterranean Ocean is hot. It's always going to be like this. It's never going to get better. The storms are going to be absolutely apocalyptic. The fires are going to be apocalyptic. The Earth system is going to do the rug pull. We are going to be absolutely annihilated in these places, and that includes the lower third to a half of the United States of America. Those people are going to be annihilated. They're finished. They're done. They're done. There's nothing can stop this. They have to get out. Well, where the hell are they going to go? They can't go to Russia. They're going to have to go to Canada. That's this entire thing. That's what this is all about, this whole thing. Territory. Lebensraum. Okay, it's like the Germans wanted to get into fucking Czechoslovakia, right? We need space for our people. It's the same playbook. Give us space. Where can we get space? Well, we can get it from Mexico. Oh, well, that's the wrong direction. That's going south. That's not going to cut it. So we have to go north. Well, what's up north? Oh, Canada. Well, they're easy to roll over. Let's go take on the Canadians. That's what this is all about. It's a land grab because of global heating. And it's only going to get worse. And where are the Europeans going to go? Where are the French going to go? They're going to go to Germany. They're going to go to the UK. They're going to be welcome there. They're going to go to Scandinavia. Where are the Italians going to go? Where are the Greeks going to go? The Greeks going to go into the Eastern Europe. They're going to go into Romania. They're going to go into Poland. Where are they going to go? They have nowhere to go.
Not to mention people living around the equator as well. You know, in other like Africa, Asia, and all this.
Okay.
You know?
Well, I got news for you there.
Go on.
Everybody living between the Tropic of Capricorn and the Tropic of Cancer will perish. They have nowhere to go. They have nowhere to go and no way to get there. Now, the millionaires will escape. Trump will sell you, out of the goodness of his heart, a $5 million gold card that gives you access to the United States of America. If you have $5 million and you live in Africa and you have $5 million, he'll just sell you the gold card and you can come to America. That's how they're going to get out. Who has $5 million? Anywhere. They could just spend on a gold card offered by Donald Trump. Who has that kind of cash? Almost nobody. 1% of 1% of 1% of the people between the Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn. 1% of 1% of 1% will have anywhere to go and any way to get there. Everybody else dies in place. I used to think when I was early into this space and was really worried that we would have massive immigration resulting in immigration into places like Europe and Eastern Europe and North America and maybe South America from the other direction, from the north going south. But there was a study done and I was receptive to it. So I guess I adopted it. There was a study that said no one's getting out. There's no way. People can't move like that. They can move on a jet. They can buy a ticket and they can buy a second home, right, in Ottawa. And they can buy the Trump gold card. And they can, if you have money, then you can get out. But the rest of the people, the hoi polloi, the farmers and the shop workers and the auto manufacturer employees, the coders in India, they're not going anywhere. They're going to die in place. And when I saw that study, I was like, yeah, that's how it's going to be. So we get an influx of hot money, rich people who can buy their way into America and Europe and the UK. We get an influx of hot money. And then we never hear what happened. Won't tell you. They'll never tell you. And you won't care. You can't even find these places on a map, right? And you'll never hear about it. And Pakistan will go completely underwater, literally and figuratively. And India will have water crises as the glaciers melt, and they'll have internal.
Well, there's a lot of water problems in India at the moment, I heard, with the cities. They can't get enough water, apparently.
Yeah, and then they get too much, and it's like, someone should fix that. There's no fixing it. This is the Earth dynamic system tearing itself to rat shit. Okay, you can't get anything. You get too much, and then everything's on fire, and then people can't feed themselves. They can't feed their family. The subsistence farmers can't even find their soil anymore. It's all washed out to sea, and it's all mud, and they have to leave, and they go to the cities, and the cities don't want them, and the cities put them in an alley, and they give them a bowl of rice every day, and finally they're dead, and their children are orphans, and the children are dead, and the people in India who can get out, they get out, and they turn off the lights on the way out. That's how it is.
Wow.
It doesn't work another way. It just doesn't work another way. We live in a built environment. There is almost nobody on this planet, almost nobody, virtually nobody, who lives sustainably and within the limits of nature where they live. And even if they do, even if there is an African tribe somewhere that has their cattle and they have their yams and they have their traditions and they dance their dance and drum their drum, they have a story. If anyone wanted to find out what their story is, that they are self-sufficient. And there's the water over there and there's the grazing over here. And then global heating comes. Global heating comes. And the one guy, the one tribe, the one family, the one guy that had kind of a story, he dies because of the heat. It gets too hot. He dies. His animals dies and his children die and he dies and everything dies. And the only guy that had a story about what he could do in the absence of all the supply chains and the built environment, that guy, he's dead. Or he moved into town and he became a beggar and, and then he died there. There's no way out, people. We are stuck in a built environment and the built environment is going to fail. It is absolutely going to fail. It was not built for these temperatures. It was not built to accommodate these supply chain crises. It wasn't built for this many people. It wasn't built to survive heat. Even our electrical grids can't stand up in the heat. Everything falls over. Spain just had an outage and France has outages and it's like, well, they need to do something. They need to spend some money. One, they don't have the money. And two, their infrastructure was built 50 or 100 years ago and it's old and it's done. And it would take $7 trillion to upgrade just the European subcontinent, just their electrical grid. It would take
it seems to be a clatterbang of chaotic and fucking catastrophic situations all coming into one in our lifetime. It's absolutely insane. Now, if we think about AI, I don't know if there's any correlation with what you're talking about, but I've been looking at that, and obviously it's a big deal. But then I've been looking at how much energy that's using. They're building these big data centers the size of fucking small countries. They don't seem to be worried about any of this. I mean, I saw lately Trump's Meta are building one the size of Manhattan or something somewhere. And, they obviously think that there is a future or that AI is going to solve all our problems. They have hope. But clearly you don't.
I have hope for them.
Right.
The AI and the AI-enabled robotics will help them. I didn't mention this in terms of Elon Musk and his entourage, but let's say he has 200 acres, a lot of which is pasture land, and he puts his animals out on it, and he has his own supply of water. And then does he really need thousands of slaves to work his land for him? No, he just has robots. And they're run on electricity. And he has a small modular nuclear reactor on site. And he's got enough technicians to manage his technical infrastructure, his footprint, and someone to manage their robots and repair them. And maybe even the robots are even 3D printed. I mean, come on, where's the AI come from? It's all stored on a hard drive, right? And so long as he has a story, a narrative about how he can do all this with technology, he can buy the technology. Or as he's doing with SpaceX, he can invent whatever he thinks is missing. And then he just has this compound. He has his walls. He probably doesn't even need walls. What if he builds this compound in the middle of the Canadian boreal forest and there's dozens of miles of forest on all sides? He doesn't have nothing to worry about. He has rocket launchers on his roof, which he bought from the Russians. And if anybody flies into his compound and tries to take him over, he just shoots them down, right? He's got everything he needs. And then the rest of it's robots. He doesn't have slaves. They need food. They need medicine. Forget that. Humans are icky and dirty and filthy. But robots, a limb falls off, I just print a new one.
So maybe, you did say everyone's going to die, but there seems to be a slim possibility or a possibility for the super elites, at least, to survive for a good time.
Yeah, I don't think I said that everybody's going to die because I don't actually believe that.
Right.
My go-to statement is this, and I thought about this a lot and did the math. It's not hard to do the math. 999 people out of 1,000 will perish. Because this earth, especially as it will be left to us after the arable land has failed, after the storms come, after the heat encroaches into places that are currently heavily populated, that earth that we inherit from this shit show will be able to support 1 in 1,000 of the current population. 1 in 1,000. That is 80 million people. Now, no, that's 8 million people. That's 8 million people. 80 million is 1%. 1/10 of 1%, which is 99 out of 1,000. 1/10 of 1% is 8 million people. That's a lot of people. Are there that many elephants? Are there that many tigers? Rhinos? Anything our size? Is that many gorillas? Are there 8 million gorillas? That's a lot of people, folks. That is nowhere near an extinction event. We can lose 999 out of 1,000, which sounds apocalyptic.
It'd be like a bottleneck in a week. It will
Not
come out
even
again.
a bottleneck, a real genetic
Yeah,
bottleneck,
right.
which is where the term comes from.
Yeah,
that's like 1,000 people.
Yeah.
Let's be very clear. And and that the only determining factor for you to be in the 8 million is money. There are people all over the planet, on every continent, in every country, that have the money to be in the 8 million. That's a lot of people from everywhere. The diversity would be pretty incredible. In fact, there would be more present diversity, meaning more people bumping shoulders on a daily basis post collapse than there would be now. People are able to segregate. The Germans are here, the British are over here, the Indians are there, the Chinese are here. But at post collapse, they're going to have to circle the wagons. There's going to be very few places left on the planet because of the temperature, because of physics, because of the collapse of agriculture, because of the loss of fossil fuels. There's going to be very few places left on the planet that can support human life for human purposes. And when those 4, 5 places have been established at great expense and through trials and tribulations and war, when those 4 or 5 places have been established and those 8 million people are dispersed among them, 2 in Canada, 3 in Russia, something like that, right? Just below the Arctic Circle, but high enough up to not be in the heavy temperatures, heavy heat, then they're all going to be rubbing shoulders. It'll be the most diverse communities the Earth has ever known, ever in the history of Homo sapiens, 300,000 years. They'll be the most diverse communities this species has ever known, which probably leads to a lot of, breeding between the races, and eventually we'll all look like, we'll all look the same. We'll all look like whatever, Arabs, right? Medium skinned, black haired, something like that. And so the diversity will eventually collapse. But initially, in the first opening decades of this clusterfuck, when people are scrambling around trying to figure their shit out, we will be the most diverse communities that have ever existed on Earth, because all the rich people, the 1 out of 1,000, will flock to these places. They'll have their gold card. They'll have their $1 billion checking account. They'll have their whatever, visa. Who knows how they're going to get in? They'll figure it out. That's their job, not mine. Then they'll all be there. And there will be 8 million people, maybe more, 0.1%, maybe a few tenths of a percent of people from all over the planet who got into these few remaining places, these enclaves that are basically built out of the way of global heating. That's it. All you can do is get out of the way. You just get out of the way.
But it's not gonna surpass conditions necessary for survival. So it's not going to get to a position where even they will be in trouble at some point.
That's a good question. The planet continues heating for 100 years. Sometime in the next 10 years or so, maybe 20, maybe 2 decades, the scenario I just outlined has to happen. These enclaves will be built. Will people be secure there? I don't know. In the book, I explore this. Spoilers? I don't think so. The people in the book, the community in the book, they elect or they are not able to flee. They can't have the blind panic that everyone else is having. Their situation, or because they're willing to speak to each other and make plans around each other, they actually form a community. And they put up walls. They use their fences to put up walls. They harden their perimeter, and then they turn their lives inward into their community. And they grow their own food. They take care of their children. They have a nurse. They have technology, and they're able to pull something together. At some point in the story, the narrative changes to, what have we really accomplished? Is this a good enough? Is this enough? Is that we weathered one storm, literal and figuratively,
Hmm.
but is this all there is we have to weather? Does it get worse? What do we have to contend with next? The solution, which I can mention here because I mentioned it in my other videos, is we're going to have to live underground. Which sounds weird, which sounds sci-fi, which sounds, fantasy fiction, but underground is the only place you can survive global heating. Now, your crops are not underground, but that's a different problem. Your animals, if you have domestic animals, are not underground. I think these people in the north, these 8 million people, they can figure something out. My guess is they're all working in agriculture. My guess is that they're all either doing that or doing light industry.
Or maybe they have the robots doing it for them, right?
Maybe, but if they actually had 8 million people and they were apportioned among, say, 8 of these arcologies, then there'll be 1 million people each. Yeah, it may be, but these are also the ultra wealthy, right? And they remember being ultra wealthy. This didn't happen 100 years from now. This is in their lifetimes. They remember being ultra wealthy. And can they have robots? Remember, robots must be manufactured. I just mentioned in passing a little while ago, they could be 3D printed. I'm just throwing that out there. But where do the circuitries come from? We have entire industries, a whole built industry segment that does nothing but electronics. Nothing but electronics.
But if we get to a situation where the AI can do that as well, it can create itself, then
yeah. The way I state this,
that's the real race, isn't it? Because we may not get to that position.
We're losing that race. Here's the question for you and your listeners to think about. Can you make solar panels with solar panels? Where does the silicon dioxide come from that goes into the solar cells? Where does the copper come from? Can you make copper and silicon dioxide and aluminum and copper wire with cladding? Can you make all that using solar panels? Can you mine the copper? Can you recycle the copper? Can you recycle the aluminum? Can you find the aluminum? Can you ship the aluminum to where it needs to be recycled to make the solar panels? Can you do all these things with solar panels? Meaning with electricity. And when are we going to turn the corner and say, all right, we're going to fully electrify our economy? Right now, 20% of our energy use is electricity. The other 80% is fossil fuels. Can't do those without fossil fuels. So lop that off. Now there's the 20% becomes the 100%. The 20% currently is now 100%. That 20% is none of our industries, none of our manufacturing. Yes, they have a lot, they have lighting, and making an iPhone requires little Dremel tools and things like that. But conveyor belts, right? That's all electric. But the raw materials are all mined, manufactured, transported, smelted, refined, packaged using fossil fuels. All of that, 100% of that iPhone. Every single part of that iPhone requires fossil fuels in some part. Maybe not the final assembly where there's a little Chinese person putting in a tiny screw. But outside of that final assembly part at Foxconn, everything else is fossil fuel. So lop off the 80%. That's all of that. And now what can you do with electricity? Can you make solar panels with just electricity? The answer is no. Could you? Maybe. Or have we started that project, making solar panels using solar panels? No, we have not. Will we start it? I doubt it. I don't see any interest in that. In fact, we're getting rid of solar panels and wind farms and everything else. So it was all just a facade. It was all just a feel good. Look what we're doing. And then we're over here, still 80% fossil fuel based. Can we turn the corner and become 100% electric, just electric? Because that could be nuclear. Okay. But could we make our economy in any semblance of the current economy, the built environment, 100% electric? My house right now is 100% electric. It is. I have they took out the natural gas, the town gas, right? They took it out, took the meter out, and I am completely electric. But I have a massive investment in solar panels. I have a huge investment in a battery array. I have a huge investment in myself. I can manage all that. Okay. It's like managing a submarine. It's like managing a nuclear reactor on a submarine. I can manage all that. I can expand it if I need to. I can do all that for myself. Can my neighbors do that? No. I'm the 1 in 1,000 who has a story. But even that, where do the batteries come from? Where does the solar power come from if I want to expand my footprint? What about all these appliances, this computer, this microphone, reading glasses, everything I need to
Mm,
survive. The
hmm.
food on the shelves, the water that comes to my tap. I have a hot water heater that runs on a heat pump. It comes from Germany. You know,
Right.
I have Miele, a heat pump washer and dryer for my clothing. Comes from Germany. What? How? When? When are we ever going to turn the corner? Not happening. It's not happening.
Right. Right.
It's just not
Um,
happening, folks.
Cougar, before I let Perpetual Pleasures come on and talk to you, he's here now. I just want to ask you. This is all heavy hitting stuff, you know. Just personally, what is your philosophy for life now that you think like this? Now that you know this, and what would you ask others to think about? And like just basically, how should people carry themselves if they also agree with you, you know, that yeah, shit is hitting the fan and we're fucked.
The shortest way to state my philosophy is is not intended to be actionable. It is intended to have the greatest impact. And it comes down to two words. Don't die. Don't die. We are in the jaws of disaster. Take it seriously. If you take it seriously, you might not die. Don't die. Don't volunteer to die. Now, the actionable part of that is build community, work with people, educate yourself, understand your vulnerability to supply chains, accept that. Don't turn away, accept it. It's scary, accept it. It's your reality. Reality, accept physics, accept these things. Don't die. Don't volunteer to die. Build community, actual walls if you can. You're going to need them. Learn how to grow food. You're going to need the food. Learn how to do other things. Learn how to manage complexity in technology, like solar power and having your own and being sure that your neighbors have some and being sure you know how to manage it. You will need these things. They won't last forever because we can't make solar panels using solar panels or nuclear or anything else. But you'll have something. Make it a transition. During the transition, don't die.
Okay.
That's our challenge. I don't know how else
Thank you
to state
very
it.
much. Thank you very much. Round of applause for you there. All right. Perpetual Pleasures, do you want to join in the conversation, brother?
Oh, absolutely. Thanks for having me on, man. This is some of the most badass stuff I've ever heard. This is amazing.
I do claim to be a savage, an absolute savage.
Oh, this is great. Yeah, this is very thorough and well thought because I've noticed firsthand a lot of my time in the mountains and stuff that I do outdoors. I've literally seen with my own eyes the change in plants and the higher amounts of water drying up. That's what I like about the mountains out here in Idaho is that you can literally because it's such an extreme climate already, every change in the environment you can just visibly see very well, right? And my friend who's a hydrogeologist by profession, he said that within the last handful of years, he's seen the water levels throughout the state be dropped by like at least 3 feet lower than where they've been for in his entire career. So that's like this is real stuff hitting everywhere, but people in cities especially are not really noticing the impact. But even most people in rural communities and stuff, really, you kind of have to go way out to really see it in your face in like, okay, this is happening, here it is. Like a berry that doesn't physically grow as big as it used to, right? It's like, wait, all these berries are shriveled and smaller this year now. What the hell? Right? Like where last year they were like, abundant and thick and everything else like that. So it's all these changes you can see. So it's kind of I give like the allegory of like, a lot of times people do the frog in the bucket one, but it's like it seems to me from what I've understood about history and how water disappears and stuff, it's like everybody thinks they can gradually adjust to it, and then like out of nowhere, all the water's gone like everywhere. It's like there's no water at all, right? So it's like you look at historically, it seems like these
Mesopotamia.
civilizations. What? Yes,
Mesopotamia.
Exactly.
Gone.
Yep. There it
First
is. Gone.
civilization. Just gone.
So, and there was those civilizations in the United States also, the Native American civilizations in the
Anasazi.
desert west.
Yeah.
Yeah, Anasazi. So it's like, if you look at it, it's like, okay, how would it have happened like that? Oh, they probably thought they had the ability to gradually adjust, right? Oh, there's less and less water. We'll adapt, we'll adjust, we'll fix. And then just one day it's just gone. There's no water anywhere at all. It's just
Yeah,
done,
it's called
finished.
tipping points. And you're going to be
Yeah.
hearing a lot about tipping points in the future. You're exactly right. That's exactly how it is. You can cope. You don't even notice that your coping is getting harder and harder and harder, right? And you cope, and then one day you just can't cope.
Yeah, it's just gone. Boom. Just
You're
done.
what's gone. The water was going away all the time. And if you'd had a chart and a spreadsheet, you could have even predicted the 0 point, right? But what disappears for people, and this is the key ingredient to this entire discussion, what disappears for people suddenly, bam, it's gone, is the ability to cope. The ability to cope evaporates.
Yep.
Can't
Literally, quite literally evaporates.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's just gone. And the people, when they can no longer cope, they die or they leave. That's it. That's how this works. It doesn't work another way. You cope. You
Well,
keep telling yourself it'll get better. And then one day you're all gone.
You're gone. It's finished. And this really intrigues me because I'm sure you know about the civilization that they're finding about Göbekli Tepe in Turkey and all this type of stuff. What it seems to me like is these civilizations seem to have been highly advanced Stone Age level civilizations, but because they were still stuck with stone technology, when they collapsed, it was like they basically all had to go back to hunter gatherers, like overnight practically, because like you can only get so far if you have stone as your main technology, but as soon as that collapses or as soon as what you've got going falls apart for whatever reason or combination of reasons, boom, there you are back as hunter gatherers. Nowadays with modern technology, that's kind of like almost an opposite problem. Like there's no way we'd fall back literally to the Stone Age because there's so much metal everywhere. All you need is a fire and heat to be able to make blades out of it. But the point being with this is that, like you said, everybody is so incredibly everywhere, even most rural people dependent on various degrees of modern technology, to where like any notable disruption on that just has an insane chain reaction effect to where people don't know, number one, how to adapt back to simpler ways of life, but like you're describing, it actually makes practically the earlier ways of life impossible because you can't really you can't live outdoors that way, the way you would want to, because the climate's gone.
There is no earth system. There is no natural. I was talking earlier about the built environment. The corollary to that is the natural environment. Built environment, natural environment. If the tiger, in my example, in the zoo, was released to the natural environment, the tiger could be a tiger, hunt, find other tigers, reproduce, right? But for humans' purposes, there is no natural habitat.
Correct.
You could release the tiger even into an urban environment, and the tiger would be okay-ish, right? Maybe it can't find a mate, but it would be okay-ish. It could eat things, eat people. But there's no natural habitat for humans. We have destroyed everything that was natural habitat. When Mesopotamia collapsed under whatever it was, lack of water, lack of planning, they salinated their soils, a combination of things, climate change, they could at least escape back into the natural environment because it existed. And people can migrate all over Eurasia. People can migrate all over North and South America. They can go these places. There are land bridges. There's everything. They can just up sticks and go. But for humans, for 8,000 million humans, 8,000 million humans, God, that's a big number. There's no natural habitat. There's nothing.
There's none.
Natural habitat might have existed at one time. What's happened to it? It's been paved over. It's been cemented over. It's been turned into cities. Right here in the South Bay, this used to be called the land of heart's delight. They had the soil here is like 80 feet thick from all the alluvial runoff and all the ocean sediments that used to be here. And this could feed the entire peninsula all the way up to San Francisco, maybe into the North Bay, the Valley of Heart's Delight. They had orchards, they had vineyards, they had everything here. It was all started by the Spanish. It's all under concrete now. All of it. Every square foot of it, except backyards. People have their backyards still. A lot of those don't even have their backyard available. They'd have to go back there and work for weeks to get their backyard available. And will they have time to do that? Will we be able to do what the Mesopotamians did when the chips were down? We'll be able to just, got my shovel, got my seeds, got my water source, got my well. I'll just plant some seeds and I'll eat my food and I'll be fine, hunter-gatherer, whatever. No, there's nothing here. Nothing. There's nothing. There's nothing. And that's part of the panic. People realize, oh my God, there's no food at the store. There's no water at the tap. What's happening? What's going on? My neighbors are leaving. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And they all get on the freeway and they all drive and they all die. They all die on the freeway. You just fucking die.
Just
I mean,
rotting
what
in the
other
heat
answer
on
is
the
there?
freeway.
They die on the freeway.
Yep.
You're not going anywhere. You're not going anywhere. Because then where you're going, they're having the same problem you're having. And when you get there, they're not going to want you. And you're going to get there on the freeway. And how many service stations are you going to pass that don't even have gas anymore because of 20 million people on the freeway trying to go someplace where they're not even welcome? How is this shit supposed to work? Explain this to me.
It's going to be dried up in no time. Dried up in no time. And here's the thing.
We are not set up for any of this.
No, none of it. And even where I live out here in like, even though I live next to the biggest wilderness area in the lower 48 states, even out here, the reason, the specific reason it's still the biggest wilderness area is because of how rugged and hard to access it is. But that is its own catch-22. The majority of humans can't even live out in that degree of ruggedness for any long-term period of time. So that's why it's wilderness. And this is another catch-22 a lot of people who have sort of Rambo fantasies don't understand. It's like all the areas on the planet that are remote and like, you know, in a mostly free of humans, they're extremely hard to survive in. And that's why. That's the reason they're so remote.
That's why anybody allowed them to be designated as federal protected forests.
Exactly.
No one could use it. I mean, do you think that the US Midwest, where it's flat and the soil is 40 feet thick and there's all this water in the Aglala aquifer, do you think that would have been designated a federal preserve?
Hell no, never.
No, the first thing they did was they drove the Indians off, killed the bison, right? Got rid of the wolves, and they claimed it. They didn't preserve shit, okay? And every place that is designated as a wilderness that you can go to and have your camping trip and have your time with nature, and those are all good things to be doing, it's not going to support anybody. There's probably, where I live in California, the Bay Area, there's probably 5 people. There's probably 5 outdoorsmen who have lived in the woods enough, camping, hunting, have the right equipment, have the right mindset, right? Scout mindset. Got to start up here. There's probably 5 people in the entirety of California who can live in any of these forested areas. And you know, maybe you're one of those people. I don't know, but you know what I'm talking about. You need skills, you need equipment, you need a mindset. Oh, and you're going to abandon your job. You're going to abandon your neighbors. You're going to abandon everything that is deemed sacred and eternal to go live up in the woods. And when are you going to do that? Right. How are you going to do that?
It's the 5 people. It's like, it's literally a situation where basically, like I look at ancient Spain too, and the climate where I live is very similar to ancient Spain's climate, but I look at how the ancient Spanish in that region lived, the Iberians during the Roman era, their majority of their life was spent raiding because they didn't have enough soils to grow enough of their food. So raiding other people, raiding other groups was actually a huge aspect of their culture for that reason.
Yeah.
Because they didn't have the soils to grow stuff properly, and you know, especially northern Spain, right? So basically,
part of hunting and gathering, you know, writ large, is theft.
Yeah, a lot of it is theft.
A lot of it is theft. I'm going to go hunt and gather. Oops, I think I'll raid this colony first. I'll take all their stuff and destroy them, destroy their animals, destroy their crops. But I have some food now and I'll eat this. And well, you're not going to go back there and hit them again. They're gone. It's theft. And it's a doom spiral. It's a downward spiral into annihilation.
It is. Yep. Because that's like, it's a lot, in most cases, it's easier to just raid another group that already exists versus trying to, you know, establish something yourself. And that's a huge factor that's going to lead to a lot of diseases and injuries, death by infection, you know, one cut, one gunshot wound. I mean, if you don't have the medical expertise guaranteed to be able to fix that and the medicine and everything on you, like you're pretty much doomed if you don't have professional medical assistance. Like,
I want to introduce a concept here that I just learned recently, like in the last year, which is something called path dependence. We will never be here again. The path humanity took from Mesopotamia to now took place through certain events that had to take place in a certain order, given that certain resources would be available. There was a path dependency for the English to colonize North America. They had sailing ships. Why did they have sailing ships? Because they were at war with Spain. And then they had all these things going on. And then they ran out of wood. So then they were in North America. That whole story arc will never repeat itself. The industrialization era got started with coal. Then they discovered oil, and then they found uses for natural gas. And then they, some of the oil was available right on the surface. Some of the coal was just right on the surface. You just pick it up off the ground. And so they got the easy stuff. That's a path dependency. There will never be easy anything after this. No one's going to reboot civilization by going offshore drilling for oil on the continental shelf. That is
That's a great point.
That is not fucking going to happen. We're not going to. Our ancestors, 100 years from now, are not going to say, "Well, maybe we should start digging for coal 600 feet underground." Using what? How?
600 feet underground. That's hilarious.
The path dependency feature of this entire civilization cannot be underestimated. You do not want to underestimate that. We will not go back to hunter-gatherers. That's a path.
Exactly.
Those people were embedded in small numbers of people who had critical skills that they learned from childhood, not when they're 35 years old and the civilization just collapsed.
Right.
When they were children, they learned through observation how to survive, and they were embedded in a completely intact natural world. And the fact that they could move from one valley to the next, and follow the deer, and follow the herds, follow the salmon. There was always going to be clean water. There was always going to be wood on the ground that they could pick up and make a fire with. That environment, that's gone. That is 100% gone.
Finished.
And getting that back, to re-embed ourselves in, to be like that, to get all that back, is the work of geology.
Yep, it is.
Geological time.
And there's not enough time for it to rebuild itself. That's the major issue of it. There's not enough time to rebuild all those natural resources.
For it to rebuild itself. And we cannot rebuild it.
No, we can't.
We can't.
And what's interesting is even like if you study the Paiutes who used to live in this area and the Shoshone and stuff like that, the Paiutes, they're a great case study in like even people who had like the best survival skills in the world because they were living in one of the most rugged environments out here in the Badlands of the West, like Nevada and stuff like that. They literally, their lifespan they were barely even expected to make it to 30, if that. Most of them died in their 20s. So you're looking at, even if they were making it, they were barely surviving, barely. Like it wasn't even like, they couldn't even develop art because all their time was spent surviving. That's why they couldn't develop art, basically, the Paiutes. So the only ones who developed art at all were the ones who had some free time on their hands due to having an abundance of fish, which was the Shoshone. But aside from them, it's like the Paiutes had practically nothing art related because they didn't have time for it. All they could do was spend their time surviving, right?
Yeah. So, and likewise, they couldn't invent metallurgy. They couldn't invent light industry. They couldn't invent writing. There wasn't bandwidth for it. You've identified it correctly. They were just surviving. They could just follow the animals. They could just deal with shelter and clothing. And it was always on the edge, but it worked. It worked. Okay. And if it works, then there they are. We can see them in history, culture. There they are. If something was working, there is a path for modern humans to a different organizational structure, civilization, that works for us as modern humans. There is a path. It is not any path we have ever followed. It is not any organizational method we have ever known. It is different. It is in the unknown. It is in the void. It is past trials and challenges. It is past genetic bottlenecks. Somewhere out there is a world for us to go forward into. But I want to emphasize that there's a place, a physical location on the planet, and there is a path to get there for us, some of us, to go forward into our uncertain future, not back into some future that we actually know from, anthropology or whatever. There's a future place and there's a path to get there. We don't know the place. We don't know what it's going to look like, and we don't know the path.
What I hypothesize is that the people who do manage to survive a large mass extinction event, if any manage to survive, the technology, like I said in the comments, it's probably going to be 1600s level for the majority of it, with a few elements of modern technology and new developed technologies combined. However, I think there's going to be a hyper awareness and hyper vigilance against developing any technologies that make us externally dependent on one specific resource. I think that's going to be adamantly avoided if, in fact, if the disaster is extreme enough and if the survivors are traumatized enough, it might go that way. But human history has shown us that as soon as things start to get a little easier again, humans tend to start degrading back into allowing themselves to be overly dependent on one finite resource after another. That's what we've basically seen happening. So since those are not really going to be there anymore, realistically, that's kind of how I see it. I see really, if I study history technologically, I think the 1600s were about the cap of technology that's able to be maintained, sustained, and done with just mostly hand tools, right? Beyond that, you're basically various degrees dependent on coal or some major other resource like oil or whatever. But I would say like mid 1600s, technology wise, is pretty much the cap that humans can get to without having, machine after machine after machine, making other machines, making other machines, making other machines. That's basically the technological level people can stay at if everything like across the board is just hand skill and very few machines, is pretty much the pinnacle of it. But beyond that, you're basically forced to have to build machines and have coal and have all this other stuff in order to maintain anything, to have an auto industry that's, large scale on any
Can't
level
do
at
it.
all. Or anything. I mean, yeah, anything. You
Can't
have
do
to
it.
have oil and coal at least for that. And if
Well,
you don't have those in abundance,
remember
it's
what I
just
said
not going to
earlier.
work.
There was a path, it was a one-off, that got us from the 1600s, A World Made by Hand, which is a series of books that James Kunstler wrote. And he's a climate denialist, actually, and I don't pay much attention to him now. He's kind of a crank. But he did do some interesting work on worlds made by hand. But there's a path dependency, which we can never retrace, of everything made by hand, a lot of it wood, and some metalworking, but on a very small scale.
Yeah.
To light industry, blacksmithing, smithery, making armor, but everything's a one-off. No assembly lines. Everything's a one-off. So the king gets armor, right? To discovering fossil fuels, using light industry, so shovels, picks made out of iron. You could dig for coal, right? So we did that, but the coal was on the surface, and so it was easy to dig with the shovel and a pick. But when we had enough coal, then we could start drilling for crude oil. And then we had enough crude oil, we can start using crude oil to make more complicated machines. This is all path dependency. We will never retrace this path. Never.
Exactly.
When this whole house of cards collapses, the people left over will be in a world made by hand, which they can never leave.
That's the thing. It's going to have to be that point. Whatever technology gets developed from that point, it's going to have to be analog tech that can be hand fixed and hand adjusted. So I actually looked into this with the computer chips and stuff with like the 80s. There was literally a tipping point with computer chips where there was a point where hobbyists could actually by hand put together entire circuit boards and everything and make basic computers and stuff. But the tipping point for that was like the late 80s into the early 90s, where it became impossible for a hand craftsman or a hobbyist to be able to actually continue on with the modern levels of computer chips we're dealing with now and circuit boards and everything else, because everything's too small, right? You can no longer do it by hand, whereas up until late 80s, you barely could.
It's worse than that. I don't know how old you are, but I was old enough to do that. I did that.
Yeah, cool.
I was right there with Steve Wozniak. Okay, I was doing that. But I was buying all my components at Radio Shack.
Which no longer exists, of course. Yep.
And I was studying all the 555 timers and all the LC integrated circuits, and I was looking at 8008s, integrated circuits, all from Intel, but it was off the shelf, and it was from Intel, and they had a big fucking factory, and they did nothing but make integrated circuits or transistors. You could make a decent decade counter using integrated circuits. You can make your own gates, right, using integrated circuits and weld them together. You could do all that. But what have you got? You've got a decade counter. So what good does that do? Maybe you can automate some process that needs a countdown timer, countdown from 10 to 1 or 20 to 1. You could do a ring counter or something like that. But, using ICs. But where do the ICs come from? Maybe find Where you find a
Yeah.
cache of ICs, like a big box of them, right? And the right kind, NANDs and NORs and all this kind of stuff. Where can you find a big supply? Do you make any ring counters that you want to make and make any funny analog circuits you need to make to do some electronics? Maybe somebody can do that. But to your point, you're not going to salvage any of that from modern equipment.
Right. Correct. Exactly.
That is not a resource for
Nope.
salvaging bits and pieces of technology to start over. There's a path dependency here that you need to always sit back and think, okay, how do we get where I'm thinking from where we are?
Yeah.
Does Intel still make 8008 processors or 8004 or anything like it? Can you get at Radio Shack 20 transistors, 20, 50 transistors at a time and make your own? You can't.
Exactly.
Radio Shack sells cell phones.
And that's why I suspect that even with the few pieces, like I would say probably the majority of tech is going to be 1600s level, but with whatever few pieces of quote unquote modern tech are able to be sustained long term, they would have to be probably nothing much past, if that even, like 1930s ish levels of complication in terms of like, all the metal pieces you need and everything like that. Hell, even things like typewriters, anything past like the late 1800s, early 1900s, those things are complicated as fuck.
Really
in terms
complicated.
Of the parts and shit. I mean,
5,000 moving parts in a typewriter.
Yeah, exactly.
Here's how. Let me throw this out there so you can think about this. You've got the right thought process, but let me complicate it for you and burst your bubble and destroy your life. We could have a recycling civilization where we find aluminum cans, melt them down. I actually was working on a story about that. I haven't done much with it, where a major part of industry is actually not making things, but digging up old landfills, garbage piles that have been covered over in dirt, digging them up and mining the resources out of them. Copper pipe, plastic bottles.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, there's a lot of resources we buried underground as garbage, right? So we could have a recycling community, civilization. But I want to put this out there. There's a lot of iron around here in like engine blocks, or axles, or transmissions, that you could take those apart with tools, which based on manual labor, clean them off and melt them down and make things out of them. You can make plows, you can make weapons, you can make shovels, picks. You can do a lot of things. But melting iron requires a level of technology that took 10,000 years to develop. The melting point of iron is enormous. And you have to have bellows, you have to have charcoal. It won't work with wood.
That's right.
There's too much water. Charcoal. Yeah, you know this. There's too much water content in wood. It has to be reduced to charcoal. You have to make charcoal, and you have to have colliers. That's where collier comes from. The family name Collier. You have to have colliers, and they have to have an entire part of your community, probably 100 people, to cut wood, bring it to the charcoal manufacturing, have your collier, who is an expert, learned how to do this when they were young, and they make the charcoal. And then you take that to where you're going to melt your iron, and you feed the charcoal into the fire, and you throw the pieces of scrap iron into the crucible, and you melt that, and eventually you can pour it. And you can pour it into shapes, you can pour it into bars for later remelting. But this is an entire industrial segment. You don't just go find an engine block and hammer that into armor or a plowshare or anything else. You have to reinvent entire industries.
Oh yeah. And this is why, yes, iron can be smelted and done on a small scale for like a small village or something but if you're going to do anything on a large scale, you definitely have to have people who really know what they're doing and who can sustain that, because this is something I'm really glad that I've studied thoroughly. Everything you're describing, exactly the process, exactly how to do it, studied. I've also looked into where they've done it in the most harsh conditions in certain places in sub-Saharan Africa, where they still do it on a small scale to this day, make wrought iron. Small. But another thing a lot of people forget is that thankfully we'll have a bunch of scrap steel around for a decent amount of time, but eventually things will start to shift back over to wrought iron, because it's interesting that most people don't know that steel is a very steel at this scale we have is extremely recent in history. Even up into the late 1800s,
Yeah.
most things that were made out of iron were wrought iron, and they were not steel. The majority of things, except for a few
Nope.
things like weapons and a few
And
other
it took
things.
us a long time to do steel correctly. The Titanic
Yeah.
had the wrong kind of steel in the hull. It was too high in sulfur. And
Ah,
when it
interesting.
hit the iceberg, the steel wasn't ductile enough to bend, and it just shattered because the sulfur content
Interesting.
was too high. So even then, we didn't really have our shit wired up tight. Okay, we learned a lot. We learned something from the loss of the Titanic, but it's taken us a long time. And where is that knowledge now to do any of
Exactly.
this?
Well, what's interesting is it amazes me. Back in the early 2000s, etc., there was like I was pouring through everything I could find on the correct process to make charcoal in the wilderness, right? Without modern technology, I could find barely nothing about it. But I found a few things in the early 2000s about it, just a few articles online that were enough for me to figure out how to pull it off. But after that, only in recent history did that knowledge start to blow up online and in a bunch of videos. But the problem is oversaturated by all the other crap that's also filling the world. So it just basically gets drowned out, and people look at it, oh, that's kind of cool, but they don't like really let it sink in for the most part to memory. Oh, that's actually essential to have a civilization. Knowing how to make charcoal intentionally is essential to have a civilization once coal and all the other stuff collapses, because that's going to be your only source of smelting metal in earnest properly,
Yeah,
especially iron.
just or just smelting is a process that involves original ore. Just melting for recycling purposes, aluminum and iron, and forget the
Yeah,
steel.
melting
Just
is
the
even harder
aluminum,
than smelting. Yeah,
it's going
even
to be
harder.
really hard. High
Yeah.
temperatures are really high, and this is light industry now. So again, the path dependency. You're talking about using charcoal.
Yeah.
We don't melt iron with charcoal.
No, it's with coal and with other things,
Yeah, that's
electrical or whatever other industrial
electricity and
process.
natural
Yeah,
gas. Okay, so
right.
getting to a point where you can recycle cast iron, which is really abundant, that's there's a path dependency to that. Will
Exactly.
you be able to do that? Will you ever be able to do that? Ever in the history of eternity will humans ever have access to fossil fuels? Because you need 300 years of access to fossil fuels to get fossil fuels now.
Right.
And so that isn't going to happen. We
Exactly.
can't reproduce 300 years of access to easy fossil fuels. Shallow drilling, pit coal mines with big heavy equipment, right?
Right.
That was a 300-year project.
Because every one of those machines was built by another machine, built by another machine, another machine.
Yeah,
So
it's like
reversing
original
the whole
question.
process. Yeah, it's beyond human lifetimes to
Yeah,
to
the
rebuild all
original
that
question:
stuff.
can you make solar panels with solar panels, meaning with just electricity?
As far as I know,
That's
no.
a supply chain that has 1,000 moving parts, each of which has 1,000 moving parts, 80% of which is only possible with fossil fuels.
Right. Yep.
I
That's
don't
a
know
great
what the
point.
answer is.
Yeah, the solar panels being remade. That's why, you know, even though it's toxic and polluting and stuff, wood gas is definitely a much better, in many ways, backup technology than that. However, the problem is, of course, you have to have a sustained source of wood. So you have to have someone who knows how to coppice wood properly and who has enough area of woodland to keep coppicing without, without overdoing it and ensuring that the forest has enough time to grow back.
Yeah,
Obviously, so it's
and
like,
England cut down all their forests building ships to fight with Spain.
yeah,
How
it's
many
amazing.
trees do they have in England to support any light industry based on
Not enough
charcoal?
at all. There's just not enough trees
Nothing.
in the entirety of England now at
They
all.
go through them in 20, 30 years. And
Yeah,
they don't go back
easily,
in 30 years. They'll just go through them. That's why they sent
easily.
colonists to the US to bring back timber.
Right.
They're done.
Because the coppicing, it only really works if it's done on a fairly small scale for a fairly small population. Like once you reach a certain population threshold, you can't really coppice enough in time, enough wood, because the wood doesn't grow back fast enough. It does grow back, but you need at least a few decades for it to grow back to be big enough, the trees. So it's like coppicing worked up to a certain threshold of population wise for humans
Yes.
historically, but past that population threshold, it stops working because there's not enough time for the wood to grow back once
Yeah.
it's cut,
And that
right?
gets back to my earlier analogy. There's probably 5 people within 100 miles of where I live. who could live in the woods and support a family. 5 men, and they're men.
And
5
even
men.
then, it's questionable how much they would be able to do that like 100% without needing any trips to the city or some other place
Oh,
like
well,
that,
there,
right?
post
the other
collapse, there
question.
is no city. Remember, people have panicked. They left the cities.
Well, I'm
They've
talking
died
about
on
right
the
now.
freeways.
I'm talking
There's
about
no
right now,
footage.
not once the collapse happens. So, like, if
Yeah.
right now any of those guys are still at all dependent on having to come back to the city, what's that going to look like after the collapse? You know, so
They
it's
won't
like
come back to the city.
exactly. You won't have it available to come back to. You'll be better
And-
off than most people, but
And when
that
you
logistics gonna
only
work.
for a while, when you fired
Only
your
for a
last
while.
cartridge,
Yeah,
when you fired your
exactly.
last cartridge, bringing down that deer, then what are you going to do
Right.
for deer? And do
That's-
you have a bow with arrows? Because you could resort to a bow and arrow. But if you didn't think to bring a bow and arrow because you had your gun and you had 3,000 rounds of ammunition, and now 4 years later you don't have 3,000 rounds of ammunition and your gun is
Exactly.
useful as a doorstop, well, then did you have a bow? Did you think about that?
That's
And
why I tell.
Can you
yeah,
make one?
Correct. That's why I tell everybody they need to learn how to make bows, know how to do it. Thankfully, I do, and everybody needs to know how to make their own gunpowder from scratch, and also making cast their own bullets from scratch. They also need to know how to mine their own lead, because that way you can make do with flintlocks and matchlocks for the rest of your existence once all the other guns run out.
But once
basically.
again, a flintlock, matchlock, this is light industry. They were all a one-off, and there were 100 men in that assembly place. One guy making the stock, one guy making the tiny screws, one guy making the barrel, one guy rifling the barrel, if that's what they're going to do. What, there was 20, 30 men made that one rifle, that one matchlock for that person to take out into the woods. We're just not going to have that. We're just not. Right. No one knows how to do that.
Well,
and if the information on how to do that is on the internet, it's gone.
Yeah, and that's precisely why I say the people who are going to be the best off are the ones who already have all this in their heads and know how to do it. I watched a video on YouTube where one guy with like one assistant, he did the full process. He literally smelted the metal, he forged the barrel, he did the whole process. So thankfully I have it in my head and in my know-how. If and when I need to create a barrel from scratch, I can do so. But I'm vividly aware of the fact that I will absolutely have to be working with wrought iron if I do that.
The reason that guy could dedicate himself to making these things by hand, whatever it was, it could be anything, by the way, it could be a chair, is because he could go to the market and buy the food, milk, eggs, whatever, come back and eat it.
Correct.
Go to the market.
Exactly. And
his truck, which took him into town, was manufactured by Ford Motor Company in Lansing, Michigan. And the crude oil came from Saudi Arabia, and it came on a ship, cargo ship, and it was refined in Richmond. And then the gasoline was put on another truck and taken to his rural place where he could just put it in his tank. And then when he has all that working for him, and all of that is happening, and he has cup noodles in his kitchen, then he can eat his cup noodles and he can go out in the garage and tinker with his whatever he's tinkering with. The amount of there's, and I'm not trying to be mean to you because you've got the right idea, but the amount of path dependency that is embodied in every single part of that narrative is impossible to comprehend. It's impossible.
Well, the thing is, yes, I agree with you on any type of large scale. And that's really the key. It's the large scale factor. Because I look at it and I was like, yeah, if I need to pull off these things for myself individually, really with a gun, the hardest part of all, but that's still doable if you have the right know-how, is the gun barrel. The rest of it is not that difficult. The stock or anything else, if you got the skill, which I do. But if you're talking about large scale anything, that's 100% where the issue lies. It's like, yeah, sure, you can have scattered people here and there, maybe, and that's even if they survived, being able to have this knowledge. But the thing is, if like most, and this is something that concerns me, it's like if most of my knowledge that I have in skills die with me and I can't transfer it to enough people or enough of it to enough people before I die, I'm like, shit, I might transfer like one piece of information to one person and then something else to somebody else, but who knows if they're going to survive. Like it's a logistical nightmare when you think about it. It's like,
I want to address that point. You just brought up, that's actually a critical point. And it's the biggest bottleneck to us surviving this. But right now, I need to take a bathroom break. Okay, I'll be right back.
Yeah, no worries. So D&W, are you still on with us? Are you still actively hearing, listening, etc.? Or have you had to step away temporarily? But so basically what's interesting about this topic, I think is that, like, when it comes to forging gun barrels, you know, of like 1600s level technology and all of the skills basically at around that time and before it, with maybe a handful of skills that came into existence after that. So like canning and things like that. Like, it doesn't really matter how much skills an individual has. Uh, the point is, if those skills are not wide enough spread and are not consistently known by enough people on a large enough scale, that still can be enough for, even if people survive, for the bottleneck of whoever survives to still be enough to lead to the gradual extinction of everybody left, right? If even if somebody survived for a handful of decades or whatever like that. But let's just say people, you know, groups throughout the world did somehow survive and didn't go totally extinct. It's definitely going to be a very long, prolonged building back up process after something like that. And what's built up to, like, you know, like CougarW is saying, what gets back, you know, built back up to is probably going to be up to like 1600 levels of technology with a few bits of more modern tech. But, you know, like you said, that whole principle of the issue of not being able to get that knowledge spread out and extended out to other people and stuff. Like, even now, with all the modern technology and all this stuff available, people have all this free time to study this stuff as like a hobby. And it really, I'm not surprised, but I'm more like horrified. I'm horrified that there's so many people in my life who have come to me and asked me to learn so many different things, whether it's craft skills or art or music or outdoor survival stuff or whatever, any number of
Hmm.
things they want to learn. But I've almost never have I seen anyone, like, right after I teach them the stuff, do very much with it at all. You know,
Right.
it's I almost never see them do anything with it in earnest, and that really horrifies me
It'd be
because
like that. I just want to ask: is Doom Wizard coming on? Doom Wizard is another person interested in these matters at CougarW, and it would be great to have him on here to have a little chit chat. Doom Wizard, you're on the show. I don't know if you're familiar with CougarW, but he's on your team. He thinks shit is about to hit the fan. Would you like to introduce yourself and perhaps relay some of your latest musings on the matter?
I'm the Doom Wizard. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Excellent. I don't really consider it a team. Just to be honest, we're all in this fucked circus clown show together. I'm making mac and cheese right now. It's the most rudimentary fucking meal I can make on a Wednesday night, but that's happening. And well, it's pretty mainstream now. Collapse is like widely spoken about and said in terms of whatever way you want to lens, from economically, domestically. I mean, we just had this big parade from China, and so I take that into regard. But he just perpetual just said something about like who's going to survive through the bottleneck, just cutting right to the matter. In several decades, like what I think the planet can support. Don't quote me on this. Something like, in our way of life, like maybe 500,000 people maximum living like the way we do. But even that's subjective because we would still emit carbon emissions. So that we're an overshoot. It's clear. Too many humans consuming too many resources on a finite planet. Everyone understands that now. And if you don't, you're just a clueless moron and out of touch with reality, probably traumatized deeply. But Team Humanity's fucked. I mean, we're all in this together. Who are those going to be like through the bottleneck? Like what kind of cultures and customs? I think it's like a quasi paganism, Amish type peoples who, you know, just like every other tribal, you know, communities died before. They'd make up stories. We love fucking stories. We love telling ourselves stories. And it'll notably be about, like, you know, these hieroglyphic fucking paintings of like airplanes and the society. You play Horizon Zero Dawn. If you heard of that game, it's like way in the future.
I have played it a lot. Yes.
Okay, so you're familiar. That presents a good kind of analog for what I'm talking about. Not, you know, obviously in that fantastical, you know, realm, but it really hits the bell. You know, they really did some deep thinking on that concept of right,
yes.
right.
Yes.
So
yes, I agree.
You know, whether we have like the technology in that game, obviously, like it's sci-fi, and and cool, and that's the mix of the appeal about it. But I mean, at this point, we're just looking at like fucking books and like ROM drives on Raspberry Pis of just like, I mean, I have a large language model on a thumb drive right now that has over 14 million books installed, you know, and pretty much all of Wikipedia like 10,000 times. And I can ask it anything, any question you can ever imagine. And so that kind of information is going to be passed. Information is not our problem. It's the attack on reasoning and critical thought that's been occurring over decades. And we've been through this circle before with rise of Hitler and Germany, World War II. Like we're not that much different. But on this time, it's a global scale, and we're all going down with it. So if people can't connect the dots, you know, multiple concurrent weather extremes all around the globe causing mass migration like we've never seen before and crop failure. If they can't connect the dots now, then, you know, they were stupid. They never did listen in the first place. They never listened later. Stupid is, stupid does. You can't even come talk to them. You're an alien. Like the people in this group are like fucking aliens to most, for all intents and purposes, for most people. When we speak, we sound like we speak fucking Farsi. Like we don't even make sense to them. So it's not even worth, yeah, it is a logistical challenge, warning everybody. I've been doing for the past 5 years on my channel. And I've just come to acceptance that, like, you know, I work in a parts shop. I hear people talk stupid shit all the time about auto marine parts shop. And I used to stop and be like, well, you know, the jet, try to explain them logically, like, well, the extreme temperature differences are as a result of jet stream blocking and waving patterns, and because the warming Arctic is much faster. All the science, just shut up, smile at them, and they're just worms. We're all going to be biting the bullet ourselves, and instead turn that action, that despair of trying to warn your community, which is just the people you're around in your daily life, and start prepping your own skills. Grab the popcorn and watch the show. Most people I know in my circle now know what they're going to do. They're going to try to fucking survive. That's it. However that looks. Scavenging, growing. I mean, you're going to need a lot of food to support you and your family. Like a lot of food.
I'm going to interrupt you here.
Please do.
Okay, yes. We're here to have a conversation. So a couple of things about that. Your circle could be online.
Oh, in person and online. Yeah.
Okay. Then because that's typical these days. Your circle is not going to save you.
Oh, I know that. Yeah, I'm alone in the woods, dude. I'm alone off grid in the cabin in the Catskills. I know that, dude.
So it's worse than even I'm imagining. Okay. Second thought. Your people don't understand. You're saying that you're frustrated with people.
No, I'm not frustrated anymore. I'm in acceptance. I'm done with it. I just smirk.
Well, acceptance is the next extension. It's a defense mechanism for being frustrated. You're still frustrated. If you ever saw...
Oh, yeah, because I'm human. Duh. Yeah, right. Because I'm human.
So if people ever saw the light, then you would fall back to working with them. But they're not going to. And this is my second point.
Yeah, I know that.
The second point is people don't get it.
Right. Period.
They don't get it.
Either they get it or they don't. Period.
Even the people who get it, here's some input for you. Just file this away for later. Even the people that get it don't get it, because this is not about individual survival. It's not about your friend group. It's not about having all the skills you need. It's not about any of that. Getting that is getting nothing. This is about, we have to, and my wife and I talk about this all the time. We must now, we can't do it now, per your earlier point. We cannot do this now, but we must right now build resilient communities. We cannot do that. Nobody will join you in that process. You can't do it by yourself. You need a village. This is a path dependency back to the 1600s, if you like, but we can't go back to the 1600s. There is no path from here to there. We don't have the habitat. We don't have the skills. You can learn a lot of stuff yourself, but a village always had the skills. There was 20, 30, 40 men who knew how to do the things. There was 20, 30, 40 women who knew how to do the things. The children learned from the men and the women, and the village knew, the village as an organism knew there is no path from where we are now to that. There's no path back to that. There's a path forward to something like that, but I can't tell you what that path is. There are not 30 or 40 people willing to work with you to forge that path through the unknown to get to that village. Those people don't exist.
Yeah,
They
bro.
just
I've
don't.
been on this train for 5 years. I know. I've been
Okay.
looking since 2020 for exactly what we've been talking about, and only in the past like 2 years I've realized what everything you just said. It's beyond. We're beyond hope. We're
Yes.
beyond grasping at this point, and
Yes.
at all. So.
Very true.
So when I say survive, I'm meaning, dude, just like a couple weeks or a couple months, man. If like nuclear holocaust goes off right now, like that's all I'm saying. I'm not saying I'm gonna live into this in the 2040s and 50s in this new fucking dystopian Horizon Zero Dawn world. No. I just want to get the last laugh before most of us get wiped out. Like that, my expectations is pretty low.
Then my recommendation, and this sounds a bit self-serving, but actually I'm saying this to serve you and your circle. Buy my book. Read my book. I am grappling with the path forward. I am not trying to create a utopia based on a world made by hand. I'm grappling with how do we get any number of people from here, and here is not good, to anything that is better than lethal. Where we are now is completely lethal. The opportunity for an extinction event is a non-zero. How do we get any number of people on a path that we can't envision? Not a path backwards. It's not going to be the 1600s. A path forward through some series of trials that we cannot anticipate except through physics or understanding of physics or system dynamics. How do we get through that path of trials and tribulations to a future that does have village life, where there are 30 or 40 men who know, there are 30 or 40 women who know, the children learn from the adults, there is agriculture, there is food, there is water. How do we get from here, which is lethal, to there, which is less lethal? What is the path? I wrote a book. In my book, I give them 100 days. They don't quite do it, but at the end of 100 days, spoilers, they can see it. They can see it. They're doing it every day, and they're like, this could work. Wait, have we got something? Is this going to be enough? Someone says, no, it's not. We need to do things even more differently than this. But is this a start? Yes, it is. We can survive past the 2 weeks. We were at 100 days, and we're circling back. We're thinking about what we've done for 100 days. We've been too busy surviving, but we did something. It lasted 100 days. And when we go out, when we leave our little village, when we go through the gate and outside the wall, there's nobody alive. They're all gone. They're all dead. They're just bones, not even bones. And there's dog packs, and there's cougars, and wolves are coming back, and it's been 100 days, and everything has changed. The roads are impassable. The weeds and trees are growing up in the sidewalks, and it's been 100 days. And what have we got? Can this go forward? And they're not sure. 100 days isn't enough, but they got something. And they're like, this could be part of some path forward. Maybe if we just don't make any mistakes, not one fucking mistake. If there's no disease, if there's no outbreak, if there's no hypercane, if there's no earthquake, if there's no huge fire that burns everything to the ground, if there's no mistakes, could this take us forward into something that is resilient? And they're like, maybe.
Well, yeah, we're going to be forced into that because it's human nature. We don't react to shit until it lands on our front doorstep. So
True.
Right. So we'll be literally like forced our hand into the living arrangement that you're talking about in little factions and groups all over the world. And then as time goes on, because at that point, we're definitely not implementing carbon dioxide removal technologies because we just logistically can't. So we can't suck the carbon out. There's still 500 parts per million of CO2 equivalent gases in the atmosphere, at least 550 or more.
Or 1,000 or 1,000.
Dude, right? I mean, the really apocalyptic, right? Like, let's say, yeah, we finally die out, get our shit together. There's like 800 in the back or whatever, 800. Dude, that's a world that's like 6 degrees Celsius hotter. That's that's fucking nothing. Only like bacteria fucking survive in that. So we won't even. Now, so that you're talking, yeah.
Have you read David Wallace Wells?
Of
That's all.
course, I've been familiar with his work for a long time. I mean, just to back you up,
Uninhabitable
man.
Earth. Uninhabitable
Yes,
Earth.
yes.
Go there. We're going there.
You're right. Oh yeah, dude. Oh, everything he describes that, but I mean that and times 5, like so horrible. And so let's say the 2030s, 2040s, we finally it comes slapping on our face, mass migration, crop failure, multiple breadbasket failures. Then we have these defining events. There's no way to tell how the dominoes fall. I'm just painting like hypothetically all these situations
Fair enough.
unfolding
Understood.
concurrently at once, and then we end up in this kind of communal living arrangement that you're talking about because we're forced to. And then it's 2050 and 2060, and the world's fucking like 4 or 5 degrees Celsius hotter because we never even bothered to take the carbon.
Or 10.
Right, because of the feedback loops and everything takes
Yeah.
off, and then it's like, oh, fucking all bets are off, dude. I mean, at that point, you're going underground. You're fucking.
Not all bets, because enough people will have migrated
a lot of
north.
people will die.
Yeah, they'll migrate north. They'll be
And
living
live where?
coastally.
Yeah, and live in, and
they'll be feeding from the sea to get their protein, and they'll be making.
But no, not if the seas are completely
houses out of
acidified.
wood.
If the oceans are completely acidified.
Fair enough. I mean, maybe they're eating sea urchins and jellyfish at that point. I'm just saying that. Saying that people will have to move. They'll have to keep moving. And in the book where I describe near-term human extinction, I describe a scenario where it's exactly like that. The planet keeps heating. People have to keep moving. Every time they move, they bring less and less with them, until finally they're bringing nothing. Not knowledge, not Raspberry Pis, not even steel knives. Okay, they have to leave everything behind.
Like 28 years later, like that movie. Yeah, just like completely fucking end
20
of it.
years from now. Yeah. And so they end up moving north.
Dude.
And they can't live in the boreal forest because it's a fucking forest. And they don't have armies of people and huge amounts of equipment to clear the forest. They can burn it, but that's all they can do. They're living coastally, and finally they get to the Arctic Circle. And they can live near the Arctic Circle because it's not 6 or 10 degrees C above baseline, and they can live there. There's nothing to eat. There's no soil. There are berries, salmon. How many people can live near the Arctic Circle?
Yeah.
How many Inuit? How many Greenland natives live at the northern end of Greenland? What, 2,000, 5,000?
Right, very limited.
You can end up with a scenario where there's maybe 200 tribes, probably not 200, maybe 100 tribes living in the very narrow band of not uninhabitable Earth, the very narrow band that's just short of the Arctic Circle, which you can't go any further than that, because after that, it's water. The North Pole is water. So you're just stuck. And there's maybe 100 tribes, and there's maybe 50 people per tribe, and you're looking at 5,000 people.
That's a very beautiful, eloquently detailed portrait of. I would say
what else can happen? What else is out there for us? That's it, folks. That's it.
I know.
Math, basic physics, basic reality. We're fuckzord. We're finished. This is not going forward. And
where are you located now? Where are you located? Just curious.
South Bay Area. Nice. We have
California.
A very mild climate. California. We have a very mild climate.
Oh man.
Pacific Ocean, cool, cold Pacific Ocean. We never get heat waves. At most, it gets like 90, 95. And of course, we bitch about it when it does. But you can live here without air conditioning for a while. And we could probably tough it out here. But I can tell you what's going to happen. Everybody on the planet with $100 million is going to move here. It's already happening. It's already happening.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody on the planet is going to move here. They're going to kick me out of my house.
Nah.
To sell my house to a rich Chinese guy.
I'm
fucked. I'm basically screwed. I'm living in the best place, the last place on earth where anyone can live. All you need to live here is have a lot of money, and I'm done for, because I don't have $100 million to buy a.
Yeah, pretty much. Right. The money for now, but then I'm thinking like all it takes is 1 week for the shelves to be empty, for trucks not to come, 18-wheelers.
Yeah,
and in that week, right now,
it's not even a week. It's like 3 days.
Oh, there you go. There you go. 3 days. So imagine like a month transpires without food on the grocery store shelves. Like, man, it'd be a fucking. Well, we've all went through COVID. It'd be a fucking insane nightmare there of people running around with their heads cut off. Yeah. So you know that you're aware of this, and
read the book. Read my book.
Okay,
You're
well,
gonna
go watch
love
8
it.
years of 8 years of my content too, man. I've been, 6 years I've been publishing on YouTube. I'll check yours out too. I've near-term human extinction. I got on the whole bandwagon NTHE, and watching Beckwith for years, and Guy McPherson, the whole fucking doomosphere of ecological collapse. And yeah, you're painting out, like, I'd love to get other people's based on the knowledge that they have, which we're all pretty much on the same page now. Like, if we keep on our path going, like, I think we'll hit 2 degrees early next decade, and then 3 degrees Celsius by 2040, 3 degrees by 2040. In that world, we cannot have a stability. We won't have fucking normal growing weather patterns. It'll just be complete mayhem if we're even still around. Of course, there's other black swan events that can happen. But then what you're saying, like, yeah, then maybe feedback loops. I just like to get the timelines. Everyone's kind of like, yeah, pretty much by 2050, like, all bets are off. Like, you're either in the Arctic Circle, or you're like fighting for beanie weenies and spam in the cities, like in Bay Area, and you're scavenging and have all that fun stuff. So I'm young. I'm 36 years old. So
Okay.
you know, if you were young in my age, I'm certain you would be like, I got to move on. I went to the Great Lakes area, the upper Northeast. Like, I've started trekking northward because I know that the equator is completely. I'm from Texas, and I already felt the heat coming on for the past years, and was like, no way anyone can handle this going forward. So yeah, I think from the sounds of it, if you caught wind of this, you'd be doing the same thing, and moving north. And I need to read your book. So that's what I'm doing. I'm just trying to,
Okay,
yeah,
but in the book, if you head north, you perish. There's nothing. There's nothing on the way. There's nothing there. People in the north are heading south. There's nothing. The way it works is that people in like the first few days, they're standing around talking, and they're saying, "How many guns do we have? We don't have hardly any." The police, the fire department, they're not answering 911. There's no money. There's no food on the shelves. The collapses happen so quickly because that's how it happens. It happens like overnight, literally. And they say, we're going to have to make our stand. We have to make our stand. What does that look like? What do we have to do? And they decide, spoilers, but that's what we're here for today, right? We're spoiling everything. They decide that they're going to take down their fences that are between their houses. So this is a block party. They take down the fences between their houses because their houses are being attacked from the street, and they need somewhere to flee to. And fleeing to your backyard doesn't cut it. They're going to take down all the fences between their properties, and they're going to use the wood. They're going to board up their windows and their doors, and they're going to make strong fences between their houses facing the street. And then when they're in the backyard, if anything happens in their house, someone sets fire to the house, they flee out the back and they go into the neighbor's house. That's the agreement. We're going to leave our back doors unlocked. Anything happens, you come to my house. We'll figure it out from there. And then they realize, oh, we could use our backyards as a commons to do our gardening. We could grow some food. Does anybody have any seed? Does anybody have any tools? And they get busy because they have to do something with their hands and with their anxiety. And they just keep doing things. They just keep responding, but they stay in place because what they learn is the people who tried to leave perished. Every single one of them, because there was nowhere to go. And their supply chains didn't follow them. They did not find a new industrialized world, and the industrialized world did not follow them. They were on the road in their car, needing gasoline and fast food, and they perished. They don't know that, but they're saying there's nobody left. We're it. We're all there is, except there's another camp that's 2 miles away. They figured it out. And there's another camp that's a mile the other direction. They figured it out. Are we it? Is this it?
Yeah.
Are we it? We're it. And they didn't flee and they didn't move north. They couldn't because the freeways were full of dead people. And so they had to stay in place. They were forced to stay in place.
Right.
And they made it work. And that's what I explore in the book. Can you make it work where you are? Maybe. It's a big maybe. There's an afterword at the back that says big maybe.
Consider that there's been no reliably acceptable experiment putting random people together in a controlled scenario and expecting them to get along with satisfactory results over any length of time. Every time a utopian type situation has been conducted, like in a lab, put 10 people together, send them to Mars, put them in a space capsule. NASA does these experiments and all these. People have problems, neurological problems, deficiencies, fights. I mean, it's and the way we are now divided about everything. I have ye of little faith of people being cohesive in a communal setting. Again, I could be proved wrong. That's the whole argument. When you're saying is like inherently people are good and want to work cooperatively. However, the data doesn't indicate that. It shows that people don't get along when they're randomly put together in a controlled scenario.
Okay, nobody can prove one way or the other that this works.
Right.
Okay, but
Okay.
let me put it to you this way.
It's going to be mixed. It's going to be mixed results. Mixed results all over the planet.
You're assuming two things that are actually not possible post-collapse. That people are put together in a controlled fashion. It won't be. And that people have any other options, because they won't. Some of these communities will implode. They'll revert to cannibalism. It'll be the Donner Party. Okay.
Okay. All right. So you agree.
I talk about
this
that.
is going to be mixed results.
I do. I talk about that in the book. I call them in my videos where I talk to my followers. I call them scientific zombies. These are not fantasy zombies. They're actual zombies.
Oh.
And there's a way that a certain group of people become actual cannibal zombies. This is scientific zombies. I discussed it in the book. It was the hardest part of the book for me to write because it was difficult to get it correct. What is the path? Again, path dependencies. What is the path forward? These are people trying to go forward. So what is the path that they get on that through a series of steps that make sense at the time, they become cannibal zombies? Okay. There will be lots of villages that become populated with cannibal zombies. And that is not a path forward because that is a death cult. They die. They all die. There will be other communities that on their path forward into the unknown see themselves veering towards becoming cannibal zombies. And they say, take a couple steps back and go a different direction. So because they have what? They have smart people. They have enough elders who have seen enough human behavior to know where this is headed. And they back up and they say, no, we're not going to do that. And if you have a person in your community who's extolling the virtues of cannibal zombie and other types of violence, religious cults or whatever, you throw them outside the fucking wall. And so that's a response to, we're going down this path. We've got some maniacs and they're trying to make us into cannibal zombies. What do we do with these people? You kill them. Now, a village that can't figure that out or isn't willing to take that step becomes cannibal zombies and they disappear from the record. How many villages in the book become cannibal zombies? We don't know. Could be 90% of them do, but they're not in the book because they're extinct. And that's how this shit works.
They made a popular TV show on AMC. It's called The Walking Dead. It's kind of like what you're describing right now. Like,
yeah,
it's very,
I know about it. I'm not familiar with it.
Oh, okay. Well, Rick Grimes and his crew go out through Alexandria and Southeast Americas, and they find tribes and groups and communities, and that's the whole. And there's plenty of posts up the road, and on and on and on. And yeah, it's fast. It's entertaining to try to predict and all that. It's fun. Look, I'm not posing, but
it's drama.
It's drama. Yes, it's drama. That's what it is. So,
yeah.
To clarify again, I live on 736 acres of state forest in an off-grid cabin. When shit goes down, I'd much rather be here than the Bay Area. About like 30 minutes from any close town around me, and I have like very supportive, good neighbors. One of them he's 72. The other one's my age. He's like 40, 43. And we're like a family. Like there's only one road in, one road out. I'm not bragging or anything of that shit because I'm not into that boasting stuff. I'm just saying, yeah, it's going to be fun and interesting wild ride watching all that unfold from a distance, what you're describing and the whole world. If I make it that far and gangrene doesn't set in or some shit, something happens to me, who knows? I mean, goddamn, I don't have all the medication. There's so much.
You could break a leg. Your house could catch on fire.
God, anything. Right, anything.
One of your
a bird could shit in my face.
Yeah, you lose an eye. Just to address what you're saying, I understand that, and that is a common narrative, and it's born in science fiction and whatever, Road Warrior, like you say. My preference would be not to be in the forest by myself with an AR-15, and a pit bull. My idea would be to be on the flats where the soil is 80 feet deep, where there's a river that I can walk to, where I have built a community of 200 cooperating neighbors who understand the risks and understand the challenge. And we will pull together. We will figure it out. If we can't figure it out,
I've been looking for the past 5 years, dude, and I consider myself one of the most sociable, lively, entertaining, trustworthy people. And that's not boasting. Like, you can ask everyone that knows me. I'm a man of my word and everything. And still, in our fucking society now, like, welcome to 2025. Social trust is at an all-time low. Like, we are cannibalized ourselves in terms of ethics, morality. Everything has gone out the window. So yeah, man, what you're describing, Hyde-Ashbury, late 60s, 70s, cool. Yeah, everybody. No, I'm telling you, the real world thing is, it forced me into this position. I looked for 5 years for what you're talking about. Now, couldn't find it. Everyone has conjecturing opinions about this, that, and the other, and they don't want to accept you in for if you say the one wrong thing about this or that, the other, about apple pie, blueberry. It doesn't matter what the subject is. COVID, Trump, anything. Everything's divisive. So we're going to be forced into that situation, and I'll meander out from the forest while everyone is cannibalizing in the cities when it goes down, and I will find those peoples if I'm lucky, like you're saying, because at this point it just isn't clear to us. And then we began our whole conversation with that. I realize I don't mean to talk in circles, but people just don't connect the dots now. It's like visionary thinking. There's different types of intelligences, and like visionary intelligence is what you have, and you can write a whole book about it and foresee, and David Wallace Wells and so on. People don't have it, and I need to be like respectful of that it's not their fault. They were just born with the genes and their own ignorance and upbringing. You know, Robert Sapolsky talks about this, like hating someone like that is pointless because they are that way. And so, welcome the bottleneck, I guess. So, some of my subscribers are like, well, just speed up let's just get to that point. Let's make it collapse so we can get back to communal living. And I second that. This modern way of life, ain't nobody in my community of 1,600 subscribers feels good about it feels that modern life is satisfying. I put a poll out. 90% of people do not find it satisfying. So we're already there. I think we're halfway there to what you're talking about. I shit on what you're saying a lot, but only because I come up from real world experience with trying that. But I don't disagree that like there's a lot of people on the other hand that are like ready for it. They're ready to form those communities and bonds and things again, because this digital world and antidepressants, almost every girl in a fucking city now is on antidepressants. Almost every one of them. So we're almost there. We'll see when I'm embracing it. Embrace it.
My biggest concern is these nuclear power plants melting down, honestly.
Yeah.
Not being maintained. That's my biggest concern of all, honestly. It seems like the least, like if the right people who professionally deal with that are just dead or gone or something happens there, the whole planet's pretty much fucked completely. Just from that, minus some of the other factors as far as I can tell from what I've seen.
I talked about that in the book as a subchapter. Again, the community in my fiction doesn't have a nuclear power plant nearby. But as I'm talking about something else that's happening in the community, which is the collapse of the built environment, there's actually, if you think about it and open your aperture a bit, there's a lot other things that are absolutely catastrophic. They're basically time bombs, which is what you're talking about. That not only will the nuclear power plants be abandoned, maybe in a cold shutdown, but maybe not even that, right? People will just walk away. They got a family to take care of. They're heading north. They're getting in the car. They're leaving. They'll think someone else will go back and turn down the nuclear power plant, shut it off, and dispose of all the fuel rods. Okay, someone else will do that. But there's also chemical plants. There's places full of agriculture fertilizer, right? Ammonium nitrate that's extremely explosive. There are chemical tanks full of all kinds of organic metals that if they ever come in contact with the atmosphere, they explode explosively and catch on fire. Nuclear fuel rods that are in storage, if they ever if they're stored in water and the tanks run dry or they get hot, they evaporate the water, they will burn. The nuclear fuel will burn. It'll catch fire and burn in the atmosphere. The landscape we are bequeathing to those who come after us won't look anything like 1600s Europe. Won't look anything like the Middle Ages. It just won't. It'll be poisonous, toxic. The animals will be dead. The streams will be full of toxins from runoff from chemical plants that couldn't be maintained anymore. And the ability to move into this environment as if you're going to become a hunter gatherer, you've got to migrate through this environment, find things you can eat and animals you can use for food and clothing. It's just zero. It's just not going to happen. It's just going to be zero. All of our waterways will be contaminated by crap running out of the built environment, the neglected built environment. Crap will run out of the cities and the farmlands and the light and heavy industries into the streams and rivers, and just you won't be able to drink the water, or you can drink it and it'll kill you. This is going to be a minefield, and you won't have anyone to do testing. Test this water for me, please. See if it's potable. Oh, it's not. Well, then now I have to drill a well. Oh no, I can't drill a well because I don't have the equipment to do that. I don't even know how to do it. Do I have a liner for a well? Do I have a pump? Do I have electricity? It's just not going to work. And I don't know what people are going to do if they don't stay in one place and figure it out and get lucky. I don't know what they're going to do. It's just like it's completely unknown. They'll die. One in 1,000 is going to survive this shit show if we're lucky.
I'm going to take my chances.
That's fine. That's fine. And hopefully, at some point, your skill set and your can-do attitude will be welcomed in some community of people, because
thank you.
You're going to need a spouse, and you're going to want a family, and we need people not just to survive, but how else to say this? Reproduce. Okay, there's more to it.
Yeah, but then I don't. Again, we already talked about this. I don't want to reproduce a life form into a world with 700 parts per million of CO2 equivalent and heading rapidly for a 7 degrees Celsius world. I already know what's coming. I don't want to torture anybody with that shit. That's evil. That's evil, dude. So it would be a society of like I don't know, a cult. Like we'll all drink the Kool-Aid and fucking laugh and fuck each other and embrace the world coming that's coming. I guess I don't even know what it looks like, man. Right? That's crazy.
Well, someone's going to have to do it. Someone's going to have to say, we can't let this go without a fight. Someone's going to have to say that.
What fight? What fight is there when it's already built-in collapse? Like when we built in habitat loss for almost all life on Earth. We get to 10 degrees Celsius. What's the fight? It's already over, dude. It was already over. In 1900, when we discovered fossil fuels, when we discovered this energy source, it was Pandora's box. It was like, boom, our fate was sealed.
Fair enough.
In my opinion. Yeah,
fair enough. But it's going to be, people aren't going to remember any of this.
No, right.
They're not going to remember any of this. All they're going to know is that they're surviving. There will be stories that elders 40, 45,
right.
Elders 40, 45, who they tell, oh yeah, when I was young, they drove me to school when I was 10 years old. But that hasn't happened for 25 years, right? So youngsters won't know these things. And women, coming of age won't know these things. They won't know that it was better. There'll be no knowledge. There'll be nothing passed forward except things that will sound like myth. Wow, they had tall sky. Well, they'll still have the skyscrapers, but they had cars and they ran down the road. And
like Horizon Zero Dawn. Yeah, dude.
Exactly. What I liked about that game was
IPO, whatever. Yeah,
the narrative structure around what goes forward, and that's what I've been talking about here. I'm not talking about the past or 1600 or 1700. I'm talking about the path dependency, where we are now with what we have, which is a lot, and yet it's not much. On the technical level, we have a lot, but in the natural habitat or raw skills that people can do things, we don't have much. We have Costco, we have Home Depot, we have Lowe's, we have Whole Foods. We don't have much else. We don't have skills. We have money and we have a credit card, and that's not going to go forward. So the path forward from here, where it's Costco and Home Depot and a credit card, the path forward from here is not clear. People are going to have to create that path into an unknown that will be hostile, including melting down nuclear power plants, dotting the planet, and blowing radioactive clouds that you can't even see or feel or sense all over the place. And they're going to have to go forward on some path, a new path. We've never trod this path. We haven't been here. You think we have? We have not been here, We're going to have to tread this path into a future where people do have a story. It's not the story of colonial New England. It's not the story of Göbekli Tepe. It's another story. And they'll get to that story through a series of trials and steps, some innovation, some discovery, and some rediscovering things. Simply, can we do it this way? I don't know, try it. Hey, that works. That's a discovery. But they're rediscovering something that people knew 1,000 years ago or 100 years ago. And they're going to rediscover things that people have lost the knowledge, because we don't have knowledge like that in our credit cards, in our Home Depot. We have the knowledge in our minds, and no one's learning these things because nobody has to. There's no imperative to learn these things. What you need is to have a job as a coder, have a credit card, and go buy your shit at Home Depot.
Yeah.
If you need any shit at all, probably you're just going to go to Costco and buy your case of Cheetos. So that path forward, either there is a path, or to your point, there is not a path. Now, I wrote a book that tries to explore a path, a way to do it. But
good. Well, cool. You're an innovative thinker.
Fiction.
Well, I appreciate it. I can appreciate your intelligence.
It's fiction. It's fiction, but it's trying. Look, I'm a scientist. I'm a technologist. I'm a teacher. I've been in my head for 60 years since I was a child. There may be a path forward. I've written a book, and I even call it, in the book and outside the book, a user's manual. It's meant to be instructive. Here, we don't know how to do this. Someone needs to think about this. I have thought about this. I've written a book. Read the book. It tries to show the dependent path forward from where we are, which is at a very bad, very lethal place, exceptionally lethal. This is extremely dangerous place we are right now, through the jaws, the literal jaws of disaster, where most people will be eaten, into something that is not as lethal. That's all we can claim. Something that is not as lethal as this, because this is almost perfectly lethal where we are.
Yeah.
Our dependency on all these supply chains and all this technology and all this cooperation and the laws and the regulations and the treaties and the fossil fuels and the airplanes and the trucks and the trains and the cargo ships and the moving and the goods and the food and the everything else, the banking system, the credit cards and the money and the leadership and the laws and everything else. All of that is not going forward. We will, if we choose to, if we can figure this out, we can go forward maybe through a series of different steps that we have never trod before, because we've never been here before.
Sure.
Unless you believe Graham Hancock's species with amnesia, which I don't entirely, although I can't rule it out, because how could you? So we have never been here before, except we might have been. But if we were, we don't remember. So we have to do this all over again, doing this shit all over again, okay? We have to go forward from here, where this is almost completely lethal, into a future that will also be trying to kill us. And we're going to have to choose a series of steps, which we don't know what those steps are. And we're going to figure them out as we go. Some of the steps will lead to cannibal zombies. Okay, so those are paths that are going to self-prune. Those pathways of the branches will prune themselves, because that's how it works. So we will go forward through a series of steps that when we look back from this supposed future, it's not a utopian future. It's a future where we're doing something different. Probably it looks familiar to a person living in the 1600s, but it's different. When we look back from there, which we can't do from here, when we look back from there, we'll say, this is how we did it. We did this, we did this, we did this. These were good steps. We avoided this bad step. We got rid of those people. We avoided those people, and we made these other steps. We went forward, and we figured some things out. We reinvented some things, and we figured out how to do it anyway. And then we got to this point. And now that I'm a great grandfather of a generation of people who started on this path, I'm the great grandfather. I remember how we did this path. I can look back and I can tell the grandchildren, the great grandchildren, well, kids, you're here. You're living in this village, whatever it is, wherever it is. Could be up at the Arctic Circle, and
you're a long way from the Bay Area.
Not my problem. I'm going to be 40 years dead. Your problem, if you choose to accept it.
I think you're good. From one visionary to the other, I can appreciate your enthusiasm and support for humans in general, and what you're talking, being ahead of your time, let me cut to it, is socially inconvenient. So I understand
Sure.
everything you're saying right
Oh,
now
yeah.
perfectly, right? But to if you go out and to even fucking Barnes and Noble, you go to somewhere where there's like literature and books, and you start speaking of this, people just won't even bat you a second eye. Um, at this point where we're at. But let's say it's 2035 and multiple breadbaskets have failed. A global virus is unleashed from melting permafrost. Sea levels rose another fucking 20 millimeters. Coastal ports are blocked. Coral reefs are dead. So there goes fish supply for millions of people, causing cascading effects. Let's say all these concurrent, multiple fucking catastrophes happen. It's 2035. And then finally, they dig up some book from 10 years ago on the fucking interwebs that's written by CougarW, and they think, wow, well, there was actually maybe a guy that was like thinking, what we do after all these things keep getting worse. And maybe that's a big if, and I hope they see my YouTube channel too. I'm not exactly preaching a post-world apocalyptic communal situation. I'm like you said, kind of going like Road Warrior and find your own community as it organically as it happens, and that is a very big fucking gamble. I realize that I'm not hopeful in my success, but I'm going to try that way because I just we're not in that mindset. You're saying everything you're writing and talking about now, very noble, very profound epitaph to your life to say that you were on your tombstone, which there won't be one. It would say visionary for did all these things in his life and visionary for a post world, that humans would occupy for a brief amount of time, maybe from like 2040 to 2070. They would live in these communal settings until 2080, 2100 kicks in, and the whole world is fucking completely fireball. Maybe some Eskimos on the North Pole under fucking ice eating. I don't even know. Can't even imagine the ecosphere changes. I mean, the ecology changes in that type of world. It's like a meteor hitting the planet. It's just nothing fucking very much survives.
Agreed.
So, okay, there we go. We agree on that. So yeah, very noble aspirations, man. And you've got me jazzed about reading your book. I can have intelligence. I can entertain that ideas. I'm a full spectrum doomer, preparing for absolutely every worst case scenario, as you would be doing in my age as well. I'm sure. So that we're. Thank you for your work and putting investment into thinking what we should do, man. For sure.
Yes,
it's the work of the ages.
There you go. It's the work of your life. Yeah,
it's the work of the ages. Will any of it pan out? Will anyone survive this? I don't know. I would like to think so. I would like
right.
To think
even nobody has Nobody. All we can do is like assess it's like a climate casino, over under odds for all of these things happening. That's coined by that guy on here. I forget his name. But yeah, that's all we're doing is just entertaining probabilities and all of these things interacting, and nobody has the real answer. But all we can do is like mentally prepare ourselves. And I do hope. Yeah, I meet. I tell you, when I meet really trustworthy, head-on, straight people, they're snagged up. They're in an intimate relationship. Someone is enjoying that with them, and they have their little clique, little tiny like circle of friends, and family and stuff.
Sure.
Right, that's where we're at now in humanity's phase. But we're going to be forced into what you're saying. I would say at the very minimum. Medium. 2040. Pretty much by 2040, we're going to be a whole fucking completely different set of living arrangements, world, climate, atmosphere, everything. This is going to be not what we're used to now. And I talk to some older people, and they can even imagine, even people who are not climate versed, they're like, yeah, half the world's going to be on fire and underwater, and the other half's going to be run by robots, like Elysium or something. And then that's not far off either. Dystopian kind of, that's easy to see too.
I would say half is optimistic. I would say 90% of the earth will be on fire underwater, and 10% will be struggling daily to survive.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm hearing all this. Yeah. Okay. We're on the same page. I'm laughing because now it's clicking. Yeah. That like 2040 is pretty much like the end date I'm setting. That like Well, be prepared for anything at that point. I mean, the world could be.
It's easy to mistake me for an optimist.
Okay, I guess that was what my mistake was. But you're more of like a humanist. You're like trying to. Yes,
I understand that, and it's easy to do. But what I am is a scientist,
realist.
I'm an engineer.
Yes,
I know how this shit works.
Me too.
I know what we can do. I know what we cannot do. What I do not know, and this is the interesting part for me, is what will people do? What will people do?
Right.
And that's what you're getting to.
I was going to school for sociology and journalism, and I'm fascinated with masses of people, how they move around, groups. How the fuck we came to the human story that we are now.
Yes, and that was a long path, like the one I'm describing, goes forward from here, and it worked to get us to here. We have a different path from here forward. This is the narrow spot.
And just in case anyone's still listening at this point, which I'm not on the YouTube, DNW, what's our count right now?
It's about 7.
Wow. Okay, that's cool. I know many of your viewers will watch this post publish, because that's just how it goes. For anyone still listening, they hear all this. My God, they probably heard so much by now. They've just like thrown us out the window, like fucking turn this phone off. But at this point, like if anyone wants to know how would we actually stop this horrific 2040, this future nightmare scenario world that we've been describing, would require something on the scale of nothing we've ever done before. Just to be completely clear, we would basically need to build a new nuclear power plant every single day, generate 300 gigawatts of energy. We would also need to deploy carbon sucking machines every single where on the planet right now. Build them in a matter of like a wartime effort from every single country on their feet, building resilient.
Okay, I have to interrupt you right now. None of that's going to happen.
No, duh.
I know. If we lived in some perfect world, we actually would have had that conversation that you just had 70 years ago.
Yeah. So the ship, but I'm just saying this because some of his subscribers are still on the fence. They still think that techno-hopium, it can save us, Zucker, they're all planning right now what I'm describing, saving us and building. But no, we are heading in the opposite direction with this federal election, especially recently. We're heading in the wrong direction fast as we possibly can.
I have a theory. I'm going to interrupt you quickly here because you just
go ahead. Go ahead.
Really important. I have kind of an operating theory, and I've wove this into some of the videos recently, but I've been thinking about it very, very clearly recently, which is that because global heating, climate change, whatever you want to call it, is physics, the people who would like for this to all be swept under the rug are actually having a really hard time right now. And they are the leaders of the world. The assholes that got us the Paris Climate Accords, which was just a circus act. Those people, physics has caught up with them. They thought they had 30 years. They realize, since 2015, that the shit has come completely unwired. So now what they have to do, what the Trump administration has to do, and they're all going to do it. You can watch this happen. They have to suppress knowledge about what's happening IRL. They claimed it was a hoax. You can't deny physics. If you jump out of an airplane without a parachute, you can't deny the fact that you're going to die. Someone's going to see you die. And the person who said you can jump out of an airplane without a parachute and be fine, they're going to be proven wrong because of physics. Okay? So physics has arrived sooner than any of these people expected. They thought they had until the year 2100 because scientists, of which I am one, were lying sacks of shit.
Yeah.
So I'm one. I was there. Physics has arrived. Look at what the Trump administration is doing. And people will be scratching their head. Why does he bother? He is under his leadership. They are going to decommission all the climate satellites, bring them down. They're going
I know.
They're already doing it. It's already topic of conversation.
Yeah,
they're defunding the National Weather Service and in particular the Storm Prediction Center. They are going to make it impossible to predict hurricanes. And you're going to say, well, what's the point of that? The hurricane's going to come anyway. Yes, but they don't want their fingerprints on it. They don't want to say, we knew. What they're going to say is, we didn't know. There's a hurricane coming. We didn't know. How are we supposed to know?
Well-
And what they're doing is they're going to deprive people of the knowledge of what is happening to them.
Yep.
They're going to do that. They're killing off science. They're
That's
going
how
to
authoritarian
literally-
regimes operate. Yeah, well, I know.
Exactly. They
Yeah.
don't want you to know what's really happening. And what's really happening to us is not, whatever, the Holocaust or something. It's physics. Physics
Yes.
cannot be escaped. You can't escape it. All you can do is make sure people don't know what's happening. Just don't tell them. Don't give them the
course.
weather forecast.
Leave them
Don't
in the
give
dark.
them-
Of
leave
course.
them completely in the dark. And look what happens. Then when
Yeah.
the bad thing comes, it kills them.
Yep. 100%
And when
correct.
they're
Keep them
dead-
ignorant.
And when
Yeah.
they're dead, they don't storm the Capitol demanding answers.
Yeah.
They're
I'm going
dead.
to interrupt you. Two things. I don't know what's worse, Biden saying in one of our ears how he's much of a green president he is when he actually drilled for more oil than Trump ever did in his first term. So that is a counter argument there to be had. And then, oh gosh, secondly, physics, nature bats last. Like,
Yes.
right. I agree. Like, we can't.
And the way for the denialists to, and all the people that signed the Paris Climate Accords, all those nations, all those chimps that signed the Paris Climate Accords, the way they get out from under this is they simply don't let you know how bad it's getting.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, good point. Good point.
And unless you have a thermometer on your back porch, and unless you've been keeping notes, you won't know that it's becoming uninhabitable. And unless you understand, because you've got a background in physics or medicine, what the wet bulb temperature is and how important humidity is, you
Right.
won't. And unless you know that,
Well, you can teach. I'm an autodidact. I teach myself things, and a lot of people
Right.
are. Right. There are still a segment of the population that does inform themselves. It's not that hard to read into a scientific paper or even have
but
ChatGPT summarize it.
that's
Right. Most people aren't doing that.
10,000. They don't care about us.
Yeah. They don't have the bandwidth either. They come home, they have feed their kids and blah blah blah, like work and stress and stuff. But I just my second point was there's actually a segment of the people, a population. Maybe you missed this article from a sex escort that went to Davos. She speaks multiple languages, and she says all of them have the same sort of two conversations on mind, and one of them is doom, collapse, because they all know these are smart people, business, elites, all this shit. They come here, they get fucked up in Switzerland, and they party and blah blah. And she says the talk of the town is they know that we're fucked, and there's nothing that we can do. So might as well reap the profits as best as have a party ball now while we still can. There is literally people like of the high elite class that think like that are
It's
like
worse.
cheering this. Right? It's even worse than we imagine.
Okay,
It's
it's worse than that. I wish it was just, if we can get another quarter of profits, we will have done well. It's worse than that.
Oh, no, they want it for
They-
the foreseeable future. Yeah,
they
for the
wa-
next 10, 20 years. They're like, let's get every single profit that we can.
No, it's worse than that. I want to open your aperture to true evil. There is
boy.
actual evil. I don't mean greed. I mean genocidal evil. If you think genocide is evil.
Evil.
Now, here's some evil. Here's some evil for you. They know it's coming. They're going to hide it from people as long as they can because they don't want people becoming frightened. They want them doing the thing.
Yeah, the people will freak the fuck out. Yeah.
That's right. If people just keep doing the thing and doing the thing, then they will die in place. And the elites will this sounds conspiratorial, but this is what I would tell them to do. The elites, the 1% of the 1% of the 1%, will inherit the earth without a fight, not a shot fired. Not a shot fired. They need people to die in place. They don't want them to run. They don't want them to go into the mountains. They don't want them to storm the Capitol. They don't want them to buy AR-15s. They don't want them to stock up on food. They don't want them to move to another state. They don't want them to move to another country. They don't want them to leave. They just want them to stay in place, keep buying and flying and driving and doing the thing, and die in place and leave the planet to them. That's their only hope. That's their only hope. That's their only story. Now, is that evil? I think it is. I think that's evil shit. I think
it's very self-serving. It is a quintessential view from the 1%, which history has always been sort of told in is like what they're experiencing. And yeah, it's human nature. So get all for mine, leave nothing for someone else, and survive on my own. Zuckerberg has like, dude, a complete underground fucking compound in Hawaii, a whole neighborhood. He buys a whole neighborhood in LA and gates it off and makes a statue to his wife. I mean, it's like quintessential human nature when you have that much power and money, and it corrupts them, and they just think they don't think right like we do. So they think it's really
all
evil.
These guys,
it's evil.
all these guys will have some token that will be visible to the population, that the population can throw themselves against in their anger and terror. And having a mansion with your own statue in the middle of LA is exactly where you want people to be. He will not be there. He will be 8 time zones away.
Right.
In some
compound
place
underground somewhere.
Nobody has ever heard of. In a place that no one can find on a map. He will be 8 time zones away when his mansion in LA is stormed and people are looking for one of the elites that they can scalp, right?
Yeah.
So this is all very deliberate. They have to do this. If they asked me, and I was a scientist, and I knew what was coming, and I knew what their chances are, and I knew what they had to do, and they could pay me enough, which they probably could, I would tell them, this is what you have to do. And what I would tell them is actually what they are doing. They're withdrawing people's ability to comprehend what is happening to them. And they couldn't have comprehended it without science and without technology. So it's easy to withdraw the technology because it's in the control of the elites. And it's easy to withdraw the scientists because they're under control too. And you withdraw all these things and the people simply have no clue. And it's like sheep being led to the slaughter. The sheep don't know what's in the slaughterhouse. They can smell it, so they don't want to go in there. So the slaughtermaster has a Judas goat, and the goat doesn't mind going through the slaughterhouse because he's done this 100 times. And the Judas goat goes through the slaughterhouse, and the sheep say, well, if he's going, I guess we can go. And so the sheep go into the slaughterhouse, and the Judas goat, who's a betrayer, he walks out the other side. And he goes and he eats whatever he's going to eat. He'll be used again later. The sheep, though, when they go through, they get as far as the middle of the slaughterhouse, and all the gates close. They didn't know. And the only signal they got was betrayal. They didn't know. They could not possibly have known that there's a thing called a slaughterhouse and that they are going to be cut up for mutton and that people are going to eat them and that there's even a market for mutton. They don't know any of these things. And
a lot of people are going to be angry.
Don't know these things either.
Yeah, for sure.
And the angry people are going to storm the slaughterhouse.
Yeah.
Because they don't understand. And they cannot possibly understand.
We're driven by emotions. We're driven by emotions. So to add to the lethality of the situation, we're basically getting double effed right now because from one side you have an administration that's literally wanting to hide information from us, our data readings, like you just described, climate satellites, etc. And then you have another portion. These are two very influential forces, the business elites who say, well, F it, throw up our hands, we're toast anyways, let's just keep the whole party, like the train going until the very end. So from both sides, we are fucking hopeless. Like we've just been rendered, just just zombies. We're zombies right now.
Well, we're more like sheep.
There you go. Right. So yeah, like you just described. Yeah, we're more like sheep being led into the slaughterhouse.
We can do what sheep do, and we can be betrayed into following the Judas goat into the slaughterhouse. But we don't understand that that's a Judas goat. It's going to betray us. And we don't understand slaughterhouses. But we're sheep. We can graze. We can reproduce. We can get out of the rain. We can do things that sheep can do. But we are not able to save ourselves from the slaughterhouse. And the slaughterhouse is a combination of the collapse of civilization, global heating proceeding apace, maybe global war, maybe a nuclear war.
Right.
I downplay that in the book. It's like it's there, but it's almost like a joke. Yes, we had World War III. Who gives a fuck? Now we're dealing with survival. Okay. And so there's going to be a combination of things that are betrayal. We're being betrayed. And the Trump administration, for all their bizarre circus act around science and getting rid of the scientists and getting rid of the data, for all that bizarre circus act, it's not bizarre. It's what they have to do. They have to do this now. They don't have a choice. It's here. It's real. Yeah. It's physics. Irma Gerd, and they can't say it's a hoax because it's in your front yard. It's the cars floating down Main Street. People understand that something bad has happened. All they can do is hide the fact that something bad is happening. And pretty soon you won't know that the town 2 counties over flooded. You just won't know.
Yeah. You say that, but again, I work in a parts shop and I have men your age come into my shop daily and talk about what a good job Trump is doing right now. Like
I don't care about that. Yeah, I don't. Even what Trump is doing is a sideshow. All of this is a circus act. The key to this is people currently don't understand how lethal is their situation. They don't
Okay,
understand.
that
There's
was the
made
ageist
lethal by
comment.
physics.
I apologize. That was an ageist comment. It actually applies to all ages because I see younger and
Oh,
old. I meet younger and older
no,
people who
I
are
didn't
just
see it.
clueless.
Yeah, yeah. I didn't see it as ageist. I saw it as
Okay.
headspace.
Well, we were taught growing up, that like respect your elders. They're more knowledgeable. They live through wisdom. Well, now we're at a time where
They're
they're
not.
actually more right. They're actually morons. Like some of them are actually still
Okay,
morons.
because of the nature of the problem. If the problem had been we need more men with guns defending the border from the Nazis, okay, that's something people can wrap their head around. This problem that's
True.
coming at us now
It's a
is
hyper object. It's way too fucking
It's a
complex.
it's physics.
Yeah,
It's physics.
yeah.
And you can't, nobody can protect themselves from physics. Even knowing that
I
physics is
know.
coming to kill you doesn't protect you from fucking physics. You just have to get ahead of it. You have to get away from it. If you know
Yeah,
that
that's what I've been
mountain is
trying
about
to
to come
do.
down, you have to get away from the mountain that's coming down. You can't say, that mountain is coming down. I can see those rocks coming loose.
I wasn't gonna.
I am knowledgeable about avalanches. I can knowledge my way out of this. No, you
Yeah.
have to run. You got to run.
That's what I
away.
did. Packed my whole life in my car like 3 times. Drove across multiple states to get up here, moving with people, taking jobs and this and that. Because I saw like what you said in 2020. I woke up and was like, wet bulb temperatures here in Texas, especially Austin, already experiencing it, and that's going to get worse. Okay, this is not the place that I want to be because that's not livable. If you have,
it's called a death trap.
That's it, right? I saw a death trap written where I was in Dallas, Fort Worth. I saw death trap written on.
Nobody can pull that off.
Right, and then yet it's hilarious when I see like something like influencers and like people just moving to to Austin, Texas in general. Texas is a big ass state, and being like, yeah, this is where I want to be. I want to go there, and I'm looking at them like, you are out of your mind because this is not going to be inhabitable in the next 10, 15 years. Like,
anywhere south.
Cougar, did you see the chat there?
No.
Yerf Dogs was asking about your credentials as a scientist. I know you already said earlier.
Oh, okay, there you go.
Yeah.
Take it.
Okay, well, so first of all, yes, I am a classically trained scientist. My background is in biology, which involves the carbon cycle, which is where a lot of the climate change happens. My credentials are that I am classically trained in data analysis, understanding scientific methods, principles therein. I'm also less classically trained in bullshitology. And now everyone claims they can see bullshit. I am a Myers-Briggs INFJ Sigma. My bullshit meter is big and wide. And I can sense bullshit walking into the room. And my credentials are that I've been watching this whole shit show develop for 40 goddamn years, my professional career. And the circus act that has sprung up around global heating, climate change, whatever you want to call it, global warming, the circus act that is transparently visible to scientists because they know bullshit when they see it. This circus act has been an absolute destroyer. And my message to anybody who cares about this topic is that you are being massively lied to. Now, what kind of credentials do you have to see the circus act, recognize it for what it is, and tell people that they're being lied to? The scientific community, of which I am a member, therefore I understand what they're doing. They've been sandbagging. They haven't been lying as such. They have been withholding information. They have to do that. I can tell you they're doing that. Kevin Anderson will tell you the same thing. Lots of people will tell you the same thing. We see what's happening. We understand data. I can read charts. I can read charts better than 10,000 people. And I can tell you, we are cooked. We're cooked. We're cooked. I see the same data as everybody else. I understand what people are doing. I understand what they're saying and what they're not saying. We are cooked and we are being lied to. And that's why I'm on YouTube. That's why I wrote the book. That's why I do everything I do. Because my understanding of the scientific method and the data that has been dug up and shared or not shared, and the discussion around it, including the IPCC executive summaries for policymakers, we are cooked. That's the message. That's my only message. I am not here to read papers. I'm not Paul Beckwith. I'm not going to read these papers to you. I could. I don't care. Some of what's in the papers doesn't even make any sense. It's the half the story.
Right. Yeah,
That's my
you brought up
background.
you brought up. That's a great answer. I think your dog. If that didn't answer it, I don't know. Go back to school, learn English. Like that. That was on point.
He did say he has a master's as well, right, Cougar?
Yeah, no, I have a master's degree in biology. I did field work as a biologist. I'm also an engineer and I'm a technician. I did a lot of work in computer science. I did a lot of work actually as a biologist with data visualization and data analysis. So when I'm dealing with data coming out of all this climate research, I'm looking at it like a professional.
Doom, you're echoing there, so I muted you because we could hear the echo.
You think I'm echoing?
No, Doom Wizard is.
Yeah, I'm not.
Go ahead, Cougar.
Okay, so how to say this? Be cautious of the Pied Piper. Science, and I'm a scientist, and I know this field, and science is probably the only thing that can save us from this trap. Science has failed us, and it failed us because it has been co-opted by economics. Science in the 1800s, when it was natural science, natural philosophy, was the venue of rich men. They paid their own way. Nobody told them what to do. Nobody could withhold their salary. Science today is beholden to corporations, funding corporations, and also governments, all of whom have a vested interest in people not understanding what is happening to them. And maybe that vested interest is well intended. Don't want to scare the horses. I understand that. I think at this point, if we want people to not die in large numbers, we need to scare the people. I have turned the corner. And I am not going to play this game. I am not going to play the hopium game. I am not going to play the innovation game. I'm not going to play the it's 100 years out game. We have run out of time. It is patently obvious if you look at what's happening in the environment. We have run out of time. And the Paris Climate Accords did exactly nothing. We did not reduce our fossil fuel consumptions. We did not reduce CO2 in the atmosphere. We did not reduce CO2 emissions. We didn't do fuck all. And we are in trouble. We are in big trouble. And anybody with half a brain or two brain cells rubbed together can see that we are in big trouble. And what does that mean? What can we do? At this point, I don't think we can do anything. At this point, my opinion, not scientifically derived, but my opinion because of human nature and the nature of our problem, my opinion is there's almost nothing we can do. All we can do is survive. That's all we can do at this point. I don't know how to do that, but that's all we can do is hope to survive. That's it.
Okay. There you go, guys. CougarW has spoken. If anybody else wants to hop on now, please do. I'll give you about 5 or so minutes to do that if you want to. Otherwise, we will end the show very shortly. CougarW, thank you for coming on here.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. No, it's been interesting to listen to, your thoughts on all of this. And I think it will be worth listening back to some of the stuff you were saying. And I am looking forward to having a look at that book that you've written. So hopefully others will too, and we'll see what that's about. Maybe we can have you on here again to review it. Also, it was good to have Doom Wizard on here as well. I really enjoyed the back and forth between you guys. Good. I don't know where he went, but Doom Wizard, if you are still around, thank you so much. Perpetual Pleasurist, of course. He was the other fellow that was on here first, and he spoke to you in great length, and that was extremely enjoyable. Perpetual Pleasurist is a man who knows how to survive, it seems. He's an outdoors man, and he has all manner of skills that most of us can only dream of in terms of, basically surviving out in the wilds. So, yeah, anybody want to join, guys? If not, we'll end the show. So about 3 more minutes, guys. If you want to join, please do. Yerf Dogs, if you want to come on. Retro, Divine. Who else is there? Anybody else in the chat? Michael. But yeah, if you are watching afterwards, please do comment. Let us know what you think. Divine Hazel says, thank you very much. Thank you all of you for being part of the live chat. Yes, that's true. Thank you for watching too and joining in, Divine, and thank you for being there in the chat, keeping an eye on things. And yeah, best with a cup of tea. They said Retro said it was a splendid discussion. Yeah, it was. And I think, in fairness, CougarW, you did 90% of the talking, so you did well there. I mean, we've been going 3.5 hours here, so
Yeah.
you've done really well. I just want to say, I hope it's not too personal, but this is very hard stuff. How does your friends and family find all this? Like, because this is obviously you're very strong-minded and you speak, very convincingly your thoughts. How do they find your? You don't have to answer this, but how do people around you, your loved ones or people you meet day to day, find your stance?
So first thing is I have virtually no public presence. I don't lecture, and I don't even lecture my immediate family. My wife does more of that than I do. I frankly don't care what anyone thinks or what anyone does, and I'm not here to save anybody. I say what I say, and I communicate what I do out of a sense of fiduciary responsibility. I have no audience, and I don't want to engage in debate. I say the things I do because they have to be said. So why am I doing it? The YouTube stuff, it's kind of therapy, I guess. If I'm upset with something that's happening in the world, I can get on here and vent. And I do that. And I'm an absolute savage when I'm going about it. I think that people are doomed. And I tell people that. I tell people, you're doomed. You need to do something different. You need to think about what the world needs to look like after this, because this isn't going forward. And I don't need to be there for people. I don't need people that tell me I'm right. I don't need feedback. I'm doing this because it's the work of the moment. And then, of course, things will happen and I won't do this anymore. I'll be like everybody else. I'll be scrambling around. So I hope that answers your question.
It does indeed. Okay. Well, look, thank you very much. I think we will call it a wrap. And I want to thank you for coming on here, giving us your time. And I do hope you'll come back again because I reckon, it's a bit of a strange night for this channel midweek. But hopefully if we can go another night, we might get some more people on here. But definitely, I think you will have stirred some people's interest. And there'll be lots of people wanting to talk to you, maybe agreeing with you. And I will be honest, there are some denialists out there who don't agree with what you're saying. So it'll be interesting to have them on here. Not for a debate. I'm not going to have a debate here, but just I'll give everyone a turn to speak. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like, again, as a science communicator, I do feel that I have some obligation to address questions. Like I would if I was a professor in a classroom. People come to the classroom to learn something, and then they have questions, and then they want to learn from their questions because the questions are more immediate. So I definitely will welcome that. I will not absolutely Foursquare 24/7 not engage in debates. There was a little bit of that tonight, but I think that it was really formative, and I think we made some valid points and cleared the air about some things. But I will never debate a denialist. Never. I will never do that. I'll cut that off immediately. There is no sense in that.
Okay, well, that's your prerogative. Now, CougarW, I will give you your chance to give. Oh, wait. I'll let Doom a Wizard on to say his final words. Doom Wizard, would you like to say anything closing for the show?
Oh, it's closing. I caught you just in time. I'm glad I logged back in. I was just taking a call from the cabin owner, talking about some repairs and things when he comes back in town. He lives 3 hours away in Pennsylvania.
Okay.
Yeah. So, closing thought.
I'm saying CougarW did well, and I hope he comes on again soon, and we can have a robust conversation again with a few others as well, perhaps.
Yeah, likewise. But back straight to Cougar as well.
Okay. And it's great to have you back on again, Doom Wizard. We haven't seen you in a long time, so it's lovely to have you here.
Wow. Yeah, I didn't rage quit this time. Thank you.
Yeah. That wasn't my doing. That was someone else who made you do that, right?
Of course, dude. You could never. No.
Okay, CougarW, brother. It's your show tonight, so say what you want in closing, and we'll call it a wrap.
Okay. In closing, I think people need to start paying very, very careful attention. And by careful, I mean don't fall into the trap of false dichotomies. Don't fall into the trap of debate. We need to start paying attention to our immediate environments, because that's where you're going to feel it first, when the shelves on the store start to empty. And my advice to, as you start paying attention, as you start feeling the crush and start feeling the rug pull the rug out from under you, my advice is the same advice I have at the end of the book. Build community, learn how to work together. It's going to be hard, figure it out. Be vigilant, be flexible, be resilient, adopt a scout mindset, and don't die. Just don't die, okay? Let that be front of mind at all times.
Amen.
Okay, wonderful. CougarW, if you want, you can hang out with Doom Wizard for a bit backstage here, because once I've ended the chat, you guys can keep going if you want to talk a bit more. But other than that, to everybody else, thank you for tuning in. I hope that you enjoyed it. And we will see what happens next. See you all at the North Pole, folks.
Right.
Take care.
Thanks for having me.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.